All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Friday, April 21st, 2023. It's 3 o'clock. This is the Town of Dewey Beach monthly Town Commissioner meeting being held at the Dewey Beach Life Saving Station as well as via Zoom. With that, I'd like to convene the Town Commissioner meeting. And as part of the opening ceremony, prior to the pledge, I'd like to ask for a moment of prayer for a member of our community who is ill, and that is Bruce Babala, and for Bruce and his family. So, thank you. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Roll call. Commissioner Bauer. Present. Commissioner Gibbings.
Here.
Commissioner Jazinski.
Present.
Commissioner Persinger.
Present.
And Mayor William Stevens is here. We also have counsel, Fred Townsend, Chief Speak, and our town manager, as well as a good member of the community. I guess we have a lot of things on the agenda today. With that, can I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We will have, we do have a pretty deep agenda for today, but I'll ask if anyone has public comment for elements that are not on the agenda. The podium's yours.
This is Kevin Moss. I'd like to offer comments into the record.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Moss. I'm a resident of Dewey Beach. I live on Cullen Street on the southeast oceanfront corner. Just days ago, a Verizon small cell wireless telecom facility was relocated from the northeast corner, which was across the street, to my side of the street, without any prior notice being given to me. I reviewed the permit application, and Verizon listed my residential address, 6 Seagate Court, as the nearest impacted property. But again, no notice was given to me. Without debating the merits, which I'm sure there are many people here who would agree with me at this time of the need for a 5G signal on the beach, I want to draw your attention to several areas of concern I am exploring, which may support formal action on my part and perhaps others who are similarly situated to have this pole relocated yet again. According to the design standards for small cell wireless facility telecommunication towers published by the Town of Dewey Beach and incorporated into Ordinance 778, amending the Utility Code of Dewey Beach, I want to draw your attention to the following lines, which I will itemize as citations. Line number 124, no new structure shall be 100 feet from existing structures, poles, streetlights, excluding Coastal Highway Route 1. This element of the design standard was not followed. There is a pole within 15 feet of this pole. Line item number 132, avoid placement in front of residential and business entrances, window signs, etc. This pole is directly in front of my property, right in the middle of my building, in my line of sight. Line number 133, new replacement structures shall be sited in the vicinity of lot corners. As I said before, this is in the middle of my lot, not on a corner of my lot. So they did not follow that design element. Line number 155, small wireless facilities must be a minimum setback distance of 250 feet from any playground. While some might not consider a baby pool a playground, I can assure you I was the president of the Seagate Homeowners Association, and on any given day in the summertime, we have scores of children that are playing in and around the baby pool, which is sited no more than about 60 feet from this pole, where this pole is. line number 168, which sort of goes hand in hand with that, small wireless facilities shall have adequate fall zones reflecting the required setback requirements. And the way I read that is that from a safety perspective, those fall zones need to be maintained so that people who are in pools or playgrounds need to be adequately secure in the knowledge that they or their children will not be harmed. So I guess my question for the town is, was a waiver granted for all of these? And why wasn't I contacted by Dewey Beach to at least offer input? Because had I been contacted, I believe I could have come up with at least a solution that would have ameliorated and mitigated some of the dangers and risks posed
Mr. Moss,
by.
Mr.
yes,
Moss, you, unfortunately, we're at 3 minutes, but I would prefer, if it's possible, are you in town this coming week?
I will be back, yes, next week.
Why don't you reach out to Town Hall and schedule a time? Happy to meet with you in person to discuss, and so that we can go through this process. But this is
great.
for public comment, not for response for public comment.
You got it. You got it. And I appreciate that. Thank you for your time today.
Got it. Thank you.
So good.
Anyone else? Kate, in the waiting room? Okay. Anyone here? Not seeing any.
Jason's here.
That's not for a while. Correct. All right.
He needs to leave.
Sorry. Updates and announcements. Prior to that, Chief, I believe that you have. Is that?
You want me to go ahead and do that
Yeah.
before you? Okay, great. Thank you for coming. Today's a great day. We're going to do a promotion today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read my letter of promotion for Corporal Carl Curtin. It is with great pleasure and confidence that this evening I officially promote you to the rank of corporal. As a 24-year police veteran that has served agencies in Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, you have an impressive resume to include assignments as a canine handler, school resource officer, and certified instructor. Equally impressive is you find the time to give more to your community as a soccer coach for 2 separate teams. My trust in your skill, dedication, and abilities made my decision easy to have you take the lead in reestablishing our canine unit as its first handler in years. As a past canine handler and experienced dog trainer, the choice is both easy and obvious. The experience you bring to this agency is invaluable for us to accomplish our goal for a better trained, more professional police department. You have shown your willingness to be a team player and do what needs to be done to accomplish the mission. I am very fortunate to lead an agency with such talented and dedicated law enforcement professionals such as yourself. But let's take a moment to recognize the love and support given to you by your wife, daughter, 3 sons, and of course your 2 dogs. They all play a vital role in your professional success. I am delighted to have a person of your integrity, knowledge, and background to step into your new role as a supervisor and canine handler. Congratulations, Corporal. Great shot. Congratulations.
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 She's out there. Is Kane here?
Actually, I don't lose time.
Okay.
Oh, he's here. 1 second, sorry.
Good luck tonight, guys. You playing?
No, for his practice probably.
Practice.
Thanks for your patience.
Bill, I know that we have one other.
I have a couple things.
He's fixing his hair. Do you remember? Never mind.
I remember his face.
There was 1 second.
Is
All
there?
right, here it is.
Perfect. You're working in Windy Town.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Dempsey with the Dewey Beach Police. We are pleased to have the VFW Post 6984 post out of Milton, Delaware, here to present an award to PFC Jack Kane regarding the fire we had in Dewey Beach back in 2022. They are here. Chris Story, who is an active Fenwick Island police officer, is a member of the VFW. He is accompanied by Bob McLeese, who's the quartermaster for post number 6984, and they want to come up and present Jack with an award today. Also, Chris Story is a former Dewey Beach police officer.
Nice.
Good afternoon. As Lieutenant Dempsey said, I'm Chris Story. Used to work part-time down here. Our post up in Milton, every year we present a Officer of the Year, EMT of the Year, and Firefighter of the Year. And for 2022, Mr. Keene here, PFC Keene, was the recipient, or is going to be the recipient of this award. Just real quick, just go over everything that we had. On the early morning while on patrol, Officer John Jack Keene of the Dewey Beach Police Department observed smoke coming from the Bayside area of the Swede Street in Dewey Beach. He drove toward the smoke and found a house on fire, in front of which was fully engulfed in flames. He radioed for fire and EMS to respond. He then ran to the rear of the house and up the stairs, where he helped escort the residents to a safe location. Due to windy weather, 2 other houses nearby also caught fire. Officer King ran into the other neighboring homes and notified and evacuated the residents. King ran into the home to rescue a dog still in the residence, and Officer King escaped all the homes, only sustaining a small burn on his wrist from melting vinyl siding. After ending this shift, he was on his way home when he heard a call about a cardiac arrest. He was on one street over, and just as he did hours before, did not hesitate to help. Together with the Delaware State Trooper, Officer Kane and Trooper performed CPR on the victim, who ultimately survived. The first award here, as I said, from our post in Milton, he is the recipient of the Officer of the Year from our post up in Milton. Along with the award is a check for $100 from our post as well. Wasn't expecting that one. Right.
I know we're not as fast as you.
The second award here was the award that he is the recipient of from the state of Delaware. And what it has here is Veterans of Foreign Wars, the United States VFW National Law Enforcement Award, awarded to Officer John King in recognition and sincere appreciation of his dedication and selfless service to the Dewey Beach Police Department. During John Kane's outstanding career, he has maintained a record of highly professional and exemplary service to the community and the nation. His extraordinary commitment clearly illustrates the proud core values and traditions of the law enforcement profession. further highlighted by the degree of admiration and respect of both his peers and the local public he serves. Officer John Kane is truly an exceptional example of all who wear the badge, and this honor reflects the proud ideals, and high standards of the veterans of foreign wars of the United States. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands on the official seal of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, and it's signed by the Commander-in-Chief and also the Adjutant General for the state of Delaware. From the state of Delaware, I'm sure he's glad he made it down this time, $500.
Wow. Here we go. Congratulations, Jim.
Congrats, Jack.
Anything else, Chief?
That will be it for
That was
now.
for you? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So a real quick update around town. Remington and Burdick with the infrastructure projects they've been doing. Bellevue Street has been completed, the relining. Bellevue's done, and the 2 storm drains. Mapping from Rodney Street down to Collins Street has been completed. They will be providing us the new mapping for the pipes, the storm drain pipes, in the next 2 weeks. Kayak launch area also had new stone put in. The pump station, they're still looking at with the engineer behind the walls because there is that split between the 2 walls. Lifeguard deck out back, Kate, if you could bring that up. See, we'll go to public safety cameras right there. They're going to be put up next week. We've got 9 of them going on Route 1 underneath the 9 cameras that are there. We're going to have 2 of them going in the Lions Club parking lot, and we'll have 1 down on Van Dyke Street. They'll be put up next week. You'll be able to see those from the sidewalk. The deck outside on the front of the lifeguard station here needed to be replaced. It was 20 years old. We did that. We got an estimate. One estimate was as much as $12,000. We had 2 employees from the town work on it. We did it with $2,100. It's a brand new deck, including the seating all the way around. So John and Scott did an excellent job on that outside. Lifeguards, we had 25 try out for 11 spots. We'll be full with lifeguards this year. Parking ambassadors, we are still very short. We're budgeted for 10. We're nowhere near 10. So I'm going to raise the hourly rate to $18 an hour in hopes of trying to get more parking ambassadors in. Dog ambassadors, no problem. We've got 8 that have applied for that position. The chief will talk about the summer police officers. Rodney Street, where we've ordered the parking bumper. Parking down there around Pier Point Marina. Weeding will start next week on the Center Island. We have a meeting on the 28th at 11 a.m. with all the caterers that work on the beach after 5 o'clock and the bonfire contractors to meet with Dave Lynham. We're going to make sure there's no misinterpretation on what you're supposed to be doing at night after 5 o'clock on the beach as far as catering and as far as the bonfires and making sure they're cleaning up. None of us are happy with the fire not being on Route 1. I want everybody to understand that. But we went with our consultant, CTC, that we voted on almost 2 years ago to bring them in to provide expertise on where these poles need to go. We followed our town code. Jim Dedes and I did, working with CTC, and we've moved 3 poles. 3 new poles have been put in. One's on Rodney Street, one's on Clayton Street, and one's on, as you heard, on Cullen Street. The other 2 poles down on Collins Street in St. Louis, they're still pending right now. Not sure when those are going to be moved. The new town hall summer hours will start May 6th. They'll be open Saturday from 9 to 3 and Sunday from 10 to 2. Doodles will be in town next Saturday on McKinley Street. It's always a great outing. Spots around town. We started to put those in. We put one down on the corner of Van Dyke and Route 1. Don Richards, really excellent employee for the town. He is retired after 6 years with the town. water department. Scott has done a very good job, including working on the deck out there and getting it done for us. And we did have a permit from the town and the county to do the work on the deck. Beach replenishment, it's been pushed back about 8 days. So we'll see how they do in Rehoboth, but right now it's looking very close to Memorial Day weekend before they'll finish up. The chief and I have met with several different business owners around town. Chief's relationship with these business owners has been big meeting in the next 2 weeks with all the restaurant and bar owners, get them all together and start talking about how we can address some of the challenges this summer. That's all I have for now, Mayor.
Thank you, Bill. Did you have any additional announcements about the police cadets, the summer help, or do you want to wait for that?
We can do that later.
Okay, all right. So move on. Committee reports. I'll just do it by person. Commissioner Jasinski,
No reports.
Commissioner Givens.
The investment committee met last night, and we had received a presentation from Fulton Bank. It was posted online in its entirety, so if anybody wants to look at it, you can access there. We also had a report from Brown Advisory indicating that our current holdings are a defensive positioning to weather the volatility that we're going to be facing with a continued long-term focus. They are predicting recession, in case you didn't know that. We have been doing well with our return profile, and we're close to benchmark.
Okay.
And that also is posted in its entirety online.
Thank you. Commissioner President.
Yeah, the Climate Change Committee is looking for a date for their next meeting to follow up on the objectives that they came up with at their workshop, which I believe was in early March. May 5th or 6th is the date that's been mentioned so far, but there's nothing on the calendar as yet. The Audit Committee, I think we'll have the chair of that committee, Julie Johnson, on to talk later, so I won't talk about that at the moment. Comprehensive development, we're also going to talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan in a few moments, so I'll wait till we get to that point to talk about that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Barrett.
Budget and finance obviously is completed for the year, so they won't reconvene for quite a few more months. And the marketing committee met on April 4th. They passed along some recommendations to us, I believe 8 recommendations we're going to review later. There were 1,650 unique responses to the tagline contest, so we're going to be talking about that all later, but that's what marketing's been doing.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. The first item on today's agenda, presentation by DelDOT regarding the Route 1 Public Safety Improvement Project.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Haig. I'm our Chief of Traffic Engineering at DelDOT. We're excited to kind of kick this project off. We were the lead group in traffic engineering through our consultant, Whitman, Rechardt and Associates. So Kyle Clevenger's here as well, who's leading the project for us. It's kind of a continuation of what we already provided out there with median barrier and everything else, improvements along Route 1. The project, just to give you a kind of a timeline, isn't slated from a design standpoint to start really from a kickoff standpoint until July 1 of this coming year. We actually started that this past December to kind of get ahead of knowing what, from a pedestrian safety standpoint, and enhancements perspective, how can we kind of streamline designs, construction, things of that nature, based on whether it's contracting mechanisms, resources that we have in traffic engineering. I'll bring Kyle up and he can kind of speak on the specifics to the project. But again, we're here to help facilitate, and we're excited to have this project go through, like probably you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Haig.
Peter, it's Peter said, my name is Kyle Clevenger with Whitman, Rechardt and Associates. I think I was up here about 4 years ago to present before we did all the curb bump outs and the RFP flashers. So it's nice to see you all again. I don't really have a lot to share, honestly. Beyond what Peter shared, we're basically looking into the design right now, but the project scope itself is ADA compliance along Route 1 through the limits of town. So that's really where we're focused here. We took care of as much as we could with the previous projects. We have a little bit more of a robust budget and time to plan here. So the idea is to make the whole town compliant ADA perspective sidewalks. And what we're looking at is breaking the project into kind of two phases. So what we're chewing on now is trying to accomplish as many improvements as we can that aren't going to require any type of right-of-way acquisitions or utility impacts. So it's kind of staying within the footprint of SR1. So right now we're looking at extending the median barrier that we installed to the southern town limits of Collins Street and up to 1A on the northern limits. So it'd be the similar look you have now with the landscaping and the barrier. We're looking into additional curb bump outs at the intersections where there are none today. And then addressing all the ADA pinch points. So where you have utility poles in the sidewalk, some of the old driveways that are no longer being used. We're trying to figure out how we can, make those compliant and try to do all of that without any of those impacts. So phase 1 project can hopefully be constructed sooner. As Peter alluded to, we don't really have a hard deadline or hard schedule for construction, as it's all, contingent upon FHWA funding approvals. But we anticipate, being able to get that phase 1 project out sooner. And then the second phase project, which might require some right-of-way acquisitions, probably easements to kind of widen the sidewalk or provide extra width. We're going to be looking at possibly bringing the curb line into the roadway, still maintaining at least 6 feet for bikes, but we're going to be exploring all kinds of options in order to basically widen the sidewalks and give pedestrians more room to circulate. That's about it on my end. We don't have any materials to share at this point since we're just getting into conceptual design, but Peter and I are here to answer any questions anyone may have right now.
I know you're just on the design side or beginning. When do you think that when do you think you're going to start any of the development? Is there any ideas to the timeline? I know you designed July, but actual shovels in the ground?
Shovel in the ground is difficult so right now it's a several year slated project. Design is slated over the next few fiscal years. But again, we're trying to look at different mechanisms to help accelerate that process. Over the next several months, I'd say probably by the end of the calendar year, we have a more solidified scope and estimate, we'll say on that phase 1 and what we're kind of going to piggyback into phase 2 so that we can then report back to you all on more of a solidified schedule.
Thank you.
This is a little off your focus for today, but I just had a question about the pedestrian crossings and, the flashing signals. People I've talked to, they either tend to love them or hate them. And I think they're a good idea. I think they're very helpful. My question is, what sort of feedback are you getting about these, if any? I know we have them in other places along the Forgotten Mile, certainly, and I'm sure there are other places as well, but is there any way to evaluate or assess the effectiveness of those signals or anything underway there?
We actually do that for all of the devices, the rectangular rapid flash beacons. So we can send you all, on our strategic highway safety plan website, we have research with regards to before and after data with regards to those devices specifically, and we see large success from vehicle compliance, pedestrian compliance, safety improvements compared to other devices with regards to mid-block crossing. So we've only heard positive things associated with it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'd love to see that too.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
No problem. Thanks, Phil.
Number 2, presentation by Sussex County Emergency Medical Services regarding the Dewey Beach EMS station.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come here today and talk a little bit about Sussex County EMS and our exposure and certainly experience here in Dewey Beach and hopeful talk and beginnings of a long-term relationship, potentially. So as all of you are aware, our summer season several years ago expanded into May and September, and quite honestly, it's really started to expand even further than that. When we look at call volume from 2020 to 2022, Somewhere along the lines of around the fall of 2021, our call volume didn't go down any, and it stayed busy. And that led to us really having a pretty serious discussion with county council and our leadership at the county about what are we going to do in the summer of 2022 when things really start to get hectic. And back then, Chief Mackard said, I think I may have a place for you. And he and our Special Operations Manager, Glenn Marshall, developed an idea that ultimately led to our station here in Dewey Beach that proved to be exceptionally beneficial to your residents and certainly our visitors here to Sussex County. So if we could, does this work? I'm sorry, I should have, we should have. Got it. I just wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. Perfect. So this is a heat map of our call volume and the change in our call volume from 2012 to 2021, so at 10 years. And what you can see and certainly appreciate is those hotspots grew. What used to be just over the town of Lewis and the town of Rehoboth really kind of grew to be one large blob. On the west side of the county, what used to be a very small area of Seaford grew to the greater area of Seaford. And a lot of the hotspots really started to fill in. And we can only project that that's going to continue to get darker and darker and darker as the years pass. Those stars of life, those are where our paramedic stations are. Those are our year-round paramedic stations. And then those green stars represent what we have as our seasonal power units. Medic 114 here in Dewey Beach now, and then Medic 109 down along the Route 54 corridor just outside of Americana Bayside. Our first seasonal unit came about in 2008, and that was Medic 109. Medic 109 at that point, from 2008 until 2020, was stationed along the Route 1 corridor between Bethany Beach and Dewey Beach, which served the area perfect. And it really did a great job for 12 years. In 2015, we moved the Millville paramedic unit much closer to Route 1, just west of Bethany Beach at our South Coastal Wastewater Treatment Facility. And that sort of opened up a space along Route 54 that our response times really started to expand. So in 2020, we opened up our Milton paramedic unit, daytime only, and we moved that seasonal power unit, Medic 109, down to the Route 54 corridor. And that was okay for the first summer. But in 2021, we realized that our response times to Dewey Beach to Rehoboth was really starting to creep up, and our call volume was really going through the roof in that area. So this is what we were looking at in 2021. The responses to the Lewis and Rehoboth fire districts. We were doing 16 responses a day in the month of June, just over 21 responses a day in the month of July, 19.9 responses a day in August, and back to 16.8. And when I talk about the shoulder season never really left, if you look at the remainder of 2021 there, we really never dropped off from what we saw in that August, September time period. We held through all the way through the end of the year. We did see a little bit of a dip in January and February of 2022, but then it took right back off again, and it stayed pretty consistent. Looking at our system-wide unit average, most of our units, with the exception of that Lewis paramedic unit, most of our units on average are about 10 responses in a 24-hour period. And we were doubling that in the Lewis-Rehoboth area. And that really led to us going before the county and saying, we would really like to see a unit somewhere in the Dewey Beach area, Forgotten Mile, Dewey Beach, Rehoboth, somewhere down there in that summertime season. Weekends in May, weekends in September, and daily from Labor Day, from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And that worked out exceptionally well. So last summer was our first summer here. We look at 90th fractile response time. A lot of places look at average. The EMS CARE Act back in 1999 outlines 90th fractile response. And the problem with average is if I happen to be driving through Dewey Beach when there's a call and I go on scene within 15 seconds, that's really going to affect our average in a really great way. But it may not be a true representation of our average. Likewise, if someone in Dewey Beach calls 911 at the same time 3 other people in Lewis or Rehoboth call 911, it's going to take us a lot longer to get there, and that may affect our average. So we use 90th percentile, and what that says is I can tell you with certainty that 90% of the time we are going to be on the scene within this time period. So if you look at the gray bars, that's where we were in 2021. And then just putting the paramedic unit here in Dewey Beach in 2022, we saw pretty significant decreases in that 90th fractile response time. 28% decrease in June, a 14% in July, 17% in August. And we expected that because those are our busier months. So that unit is busier. We didn't appreciate as much of a significant increase, still a double-digit increase just by moving that unit south, I think speaks volumes. Overall, we were right about an average of about 20% increase in that 90th fractile. Last summer, the medic unit out of Dewey Beach, daytime only, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, made 550 responses. So I think that speaks volumes of about 100 days of being in service and 550 responses, again, to your citizens. So what's our future? We certainly have recognized and appreciated that our presence here in Dewey Beach has improved services. I don't think there's any question to that. 2023, we're going to be in the same building, same location, same idea that we have in the past. We'll start weekends in May, and then Memorial Day weekend, we'll go live through Labor Day weekend, and then continue in September. The only other thing that we do is we capture, even past September on weekends, Sea Witch and some other big weekends such as that, we'll go ahead and put a medic unit up, on that day or that weekend just to help, absorb some of the workload. So 2024 and beyond, hopefully we're in the new complex. We have worked very closely with Town Manager Bill Zolper, and we have drafted, and certainly the plans are great. They certainly meet our needs. We have made a few concessions. Ideally, our stations would have a place for 2 paramedic units in a garage. You just don't have the footprint for that. It just does not exist. But it's going to be hard for it to exist anywhere without going out and building our own station. So we have room for 1 unit in the garage and 1 unit of parking. Ideally, we would have a few more parking spaces. But we've worked with Bill, and they can be there. They just can't be real close to the station. They'd be out on the road or be out somewhere else. So, it's worked out really well. We're very satisfied with the living quarters. We're very satisfied with the garage. And we certainly look forward to continued conversations. I think if anything, 2022 has proven that the paramedic unit is in a great location here in Dewey Beach. It serves this area and Rehoboth as well. The other area that it gives us a lot of flexibility to is heading south. That southeast part of the county, every once in a while, we'll have, we say it kind of blows up. They'll have 3 or 4 calls at one time. And we're able to flex that Dewey Beach unit down there towards the inlet, down even south into Bethany Beach and North Bethany to help cover some of those calls. So it's really proven to be an ideal location for us. Certainly open to any questions that you have.
Council?
Exactly, is it? It's in Dewey.
Yeah, it's in the
Code enforcement building on
Right.
Route 1. The building used to be a restaurant. Yeah.
we're right at the back of it. That's a good thing.
No, great. Thank you for everything. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you for the
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Again, we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, Nick.
I know it'd be a little out of order.
Yeah, the council has asked, Commissioner Bowers asked, I don't have a problem with any of the commissioners do, for one of the gentlemen that's here, had a public comment concerning the town tagline, for him to stand now because you can't stand when that happens. Is that okay? So, please come on up.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thank you, guys.
To be completely honest, I don't have a lot to say or really anything. Paul invited me here to answer any questions you guys may have. I realize you're not going to go over the agreement I presented until a little bit. I'll stay here as long as I can.
Excuse me, can you identify yourself for
Sure.
everybody? Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah, sorry about that. My name's Jason Wilson. I'm representing my father, Harry Wilson, who created the Dewey Beach Way of Life slogan. I guess that clears it up better. So yeah, I presented a licensing agreement. We'd like to continue to offer the town of Dewey Beach usage of the town slogan, Dewey Beach, a way of life, for marketing purposes. The agreement's pretty straightforward. It's like 1 page. And we will continue to sell and produce Dewey Beach, a way of life merchandise, and work with other retail retailers in town to sell the merchandise and kind of improve and upgrade our offering this year with the high demand that this talk has created. And yeah, I stand behind whatever you guys decide to do is best for the town. I think that the majority wants it to stay, and my family would love to see it stay, and we'd love to work with you guys to see it stay. That's all I have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I'll make one comment. I believe that Commissioner Bersinger. We did not receive anything in terms of a licensing agreement from council until about 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Sure.
So that's why nothing has been,
Okay.
so it just came out. and
I
I'll share that with
apologize
everybody.
for
No, it's
the
all right. I just wanted
delay.
that to be clear. like,
Yeah, I have a copy if anybody needs it. I think I emailed it over to Paul. It was a little short notice getting it together, but yeah, I got it for you guys. I'm sorry I was not able to get it to you sooner.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just a quick question. In terms of merchandise that would carry the slogan, it sounds like, now I'm just looking at the letter that you had sent earlier. It sounds like the sole source of supply for any merchandise with that slogan would be through you. Is that correct?
Correct. We are the sole producer and wholesaler.
So it would not be a matter of paying a fee for the use of the slogan and then having that put on T-shirts or coffee mugs, independently of you.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I'm just saying, if someone wanted to buy their own coffee mugs or T-shirts somewhere else and then put the slogan on that merchandise, could they do that and pay a fee to you?
I can't answer for my father, Harry Wilson, but I'm sure he would be willing to consider that on a case-by-case basis. But we, at this point, sole producer, we're happy to have other retail outlets in town and online. To do is have a license for business and fill out a dealer application for us, and we will then provide a wholesale price list, as we would do for the town of Dewey Beach as well, if you guys choose to sell it, want to sell any merchandise at Town Hall. I also mentioned at the marketing meeting, I think this all stemmed from wanting to have gifts for people in town, and we'd be willing to lots of to get that kicked off while we work together to produce something that you guys think would work. We're all for working with everybody, updating it, taking opinions to keep the slogan fresh and looking good on apparel and merchandise.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. On to number 3, presentation by Center for Inland Bays regarding the Sunset Park Living Shoreline Project.
My name is Megan Noe Fellows. I am a brand new director of Estuary
Congratulations.
Science and Restoration. 7 months. That's still new for Delaware. With me today is Michelle Schmidt, who you probably recognize, an able fill-in for the time that I have been catching up to speed. And Bob Collins, who will be our project manager on this. As you know, the history of Center of Inland Bays with the town of Dewey Beach has been long and fruitful for both of us, with completing the stormwater planning report in 2017, which identified some priority projects where nature and nature-based solutions could help with flooding and water quality and habitat quality projects. You come up with a plan, and the next steps are always funding and implementing. 2019, Reed Avenue Shoreline Project was implemented, along with a bioretention demonstration at Little Store. The next project on the plan is Sunset Park. This project extends about 800 linear feet from the Lions Club Marsh, the end of McKinley Ave Marsh, up to the end of Sunset Park, to the adjacent properties there. That is the potential area, but in 2016, we left this as a concept. So a lot of these discussions are just reminding you what the concepts are. That's the marsh on the southern end. Concepts definitely include shoreline stabilization. We have to prevent the erosion eating away. Include marsh creation, stormwater drainage improvements, the kayak launch, removal of impervious surface, and Dagsworthy. Native plant enhancements, and we've certainly had lots of discussions about additional areas. Cost estimates as of 2022, as you're familiar, construction cost estimates really tough, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic. Engineering and permitting probably between close to 200,000. Construction, it's a wide range, and then project management and indirect. What we have to offer today, what the difference is that we do have the engineering and permitting funded. That is thankful to the IRA, BIL, the Infrastructure Act allotted an amount to the Center for Inland Bays, and so we'll be funding this project out of that. And then it is also in our work plan for construction funding, not 760K, but we'll get closer to where we need to be as we get the 30% engineering down. Always open for donations on that construction. Estimated timeline, the project kickoff will be this spring. We sent a task order to our consultant who will be leading the engineering and design, Sovereign Design Consulting. Depending on how quickly we move through the process, how quickly we get responses back to them, there will be design phases, probably lasting no longer than 120 days. Permitting right now can last up to a year, as well as time of year restrictions. We're looking at an optimistic construction start of October 2024. And then the center would continue to monitor function for a year post-construction. So from you all, we need feedback. Are you still on board? You still want this project? And then Bob and the team will reach out with your staff, and we finalize all the details, make sure the scope and everything works for you all as with us.
Open up the council for any questions. The only question I'd have is, I believe that is there an ask or requirement for some form of matching funds from the town that we would need to allocate, knowing that this project may or may not, I mean, hopefully we'll go through.
The current funding does not require a match.
Required, okay.
It is limited one-time funding. So everything that you can add to it helps us.
Sure.
We can do one phase with one amount of money, and with different amounts of money, we can do different improvements or different types of materials. So all details that we should work out.
Just keep us apprised so that we can work together, make sure that this project moves forward and gets done when it needs to get done.
Mr. Mayor, the $22,000 that we got from DENREC, we're pretty sure that we can use that to help with the initial parts of this project, because it was for Sunset Park.
Correct. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
No questions? Thank you so much. Have a great Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Number 4, discuss possibly vote to reappoint Mark Norquist to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a term of 3 years.
Motion.
Motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Discuss and possibly vote to appoint David Vogt officially to the Audit Committee for a term of 1 year.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discuss and possibly vote to hire Mitchell and Titus LLP as the town auditor as recommended by the Audit Committee. Gary, if you want to.
We have, is the chair of that committee, Julie Johnson, on?
Yes, I'm here.
Julie, take it away.
Okay. Yes, the audit committee did meet and look over the proposal from Mitchell and Titus regarding the next audit. We unanimously approved that to recommend them to the town. I believe Dan Kinney from Mitchell and Titus, who will be the partner on the project and has been the partner when he was formerly with Cohn Resnick, is on the call as well, if you all have any questions for me or him.
You have a question?
I do not.
Okay, this is just a quick comment. If you looked at the proposal, there's an additional fee in there for something called a single audit. That's something that we will not need for this year because we do not receive, or did not receive, or will not use as much as $750,000 in federal money. So we will not require that part. So that it was a bit lower, a bit of a reduction in the total cost.
I just want to make sure I understand that from another conversation that we're going to have subsequent to this is that we've been earmarked for the possibility of 2.8 million to assist in the federal level in our town hall. If that does happen, then that grant would have to be audited as part of that. There would be additional funds associated with that, correct?
Yeah, but I think you actually have to use the funds. I mean, and we're talking about last year, so we did not use those funds last year.
Correct, but if we...
But in the future, if we were to use
okay.
funds like that, yes, we would be subject to that.
Good to know. Any other questions from council? Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That also passes unanimously. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Discuss possibly vote to nominate the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company as the Town of Dewey Beach Volunteer of the Year. This was a concept that came out of Town Hall. We have had numerous volunteers of the year for many of committees, but as we look back on the year that the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company had in help of our residents, we thought that it would be a nice way of saying thank you.
I would absolutely nominate those fine people.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Also passes unanimously. On to number 8, discuss and possibly vote on an ordinance to amend Chapter 71-3 building permits and Chapter 93-1 building permits and requests, limousine business licenses of the municipal code to clarify requirements for building permit and pre-construction state approvals, consolidate certain building permit subclassifications and their associated fees, and eliminate the limousine business license fee. Bill, do you have an overview, or Kate, that you want to go through, to go over? No? Okay.
I think
You?
yes, that's
Okay.
me. Yes.
All right.
And let me just say at the outset that this item and the next two items come from a list of inconsistencies, unclear language in our town code that were identified by our town building official. We actually referred 3 of those items last month to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their recommendations. And we've got at least 2 here, I think, that possibly could be referred to Planning and Zoning. And this particular one, since it's not a zoning issue, we actually can resolve ourselves today if everyone is favorable. So with respect to this one, we have amendments to 2 sections of the code, 73-1 and 90. And let me go through the changes quickly. In paragraph A under 71-3, we're simply expanding the list of examples of the situations where you would actually need to apply for and obtain a building permit. And we took those examples largely out of 93-1, which is about all the fees. Just makes a lot more sense to put them up in 73-1.
71-3.
I'm sorry, 71-3, sorry. The change in paragraph C is a little bit different. Currently, the code says if you want to do any kind of construction or substantive alteration on a property that is east of Route 1 or King Charles Avenue, the current code says you have to go to DNREC and first get approval to do that construction. Actually, DNREC does not care about all of that property. They only care about the 3 buildable lots that are closest to the dunes. So the change here, and this is using some language from the DNREC regulations, would limit consideration to essentially the 3rd lot from the dunes in each case. So that's kind of a matter of efficiency and clarity. And then moving on to 93-1, we've simply made some reorganization here. The language under 93-1A1, the above fee shall be doubled if a permit is not obtained prior to beginning of construction. That was already in this section, but it wasn't clear what it applied to. So simply making it clear that, in essence, if you begin construction without a building permit, for that construction. We've suggesting eliminating paragraph B, which is kind of a nuisance fee, and doesn't seem to be a good reason for doing that. The rest of these, I think, are just basically clarification and not substantive changes. There was a suggestion from the town, I think it came from Kate, to eliminate the limousine business license fee and just have them apply for a business license just like anyone else would, depending on the number of them. So that's it in terms of a brief overview.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Gary.
Can I have a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
9, discuss the possible vote to refer to the Planning and Zoning Commission an ordinance to amend Chapter 185-30 of the municipal code to allow signage consistent with current standards and practices.
Well, a couple of quick changes here. The first part, the first change under 185-3, paragraph A, is simply just to kind of consolidate all of those concerns about signage which could run some risk for public safety, distracting pedestrians and motorists. And it's just, making it's just moving a section that was already there up into the first paragraph. The only other thing that we've done here, and I would have to say this is probably still a difficult section of the code for our building official to enforce, but I'm not sure at this point we have any better suggestions. The deletion, paragraph C, about digital signs is just a recognition of the current state of operation for signage right now. We see lots of signage which changes periodically, and to try to limit it to no more than 4 times a day just really doesn't make any sense, and I just think is a nuisance for business. So those are the only changes here. And again, the suggestion is to refer this to P&Z.
Yeah, that's my question for you. Is this something that needs to go to planning and zoning, because it seems like it's a clarification that doesn't necessarily, it seems very complicated. Does it need to go to planning and zoning?
If it's in the zoning code,
Okay.
then
All right.
you've got to send it to planning.
Yeah.
Unless we decide unanimously that it is a change that's not significant.
I'm not sure that language. I think that applies to change. It definitely applies to changes of.
Okay, all right.
I think it needs 2 public hearings.
All right, so can I have a, this thing's gonna pull up there. Can I have a motion to send number 9, the ordinance to amend chapter 185-30 to planning and zoning?
Motion to refer to planning and zoning.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Number 10, discuss possible vote to refer to the Planning and Zoning Commission an ordinance to amend chapter 185, zoning table 2 of the municipal code relating to the maximum floor area, maximum number of bedrooms in chapter 185-60 concerning the extension of non-conforming properties.
The first issue here is really a kind of a policy question. What do we think is the right policy? There are certain properties in the NR and RR districts that have 2 single-family units, structures on them. And the code is not clear if the owner of that property wants to expand one or both of those buildings. What are the conditions under which that property can be expanded? So the first issue here, again, is a policy issue, and the question is, and the suggestion here is that for those non-conforming properties with 2 single-family structures, the maximums for square footage and number of bedrooms should apply to the 2 structures combined, or should it apply just to each structure individually? That's the basic policy question. The rest of this is implementation. And there is a question about that as well, but I'd just like to get some discussion about what the right policy question is from this group.
Is there a situation which would be more than 2 single-family structures that we'd have to consider when sending it to planning and zoning?
I am not aware of any. Dawn may may be aware of some, but she's not raised that issue with me.
Would this apply to condoized things where they basically took a lot and condoized through different things?
Condos should be under a separate section of the
Yeah,
code.
they're kind of non-conforming condos on a 50 by 100 lot, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of lots have that.
Yeah, we have not tried to address condos in here. It seems.
Okay, all right.
The question is, as Don posed, it was applied to single-family structures.
Okay. And I have a motion to refer to planning and zoning an amendment to chapter 185.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 11, discuss possibly vote an ordinance to amend chapter 1-13 fines, violations, and penalties of the municipal code to revise late fees for unpaid parking tickets and time frame fee for accrual. Town manager and/or
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So after looking over the penalties and the fees and the number, somewhat complicated. We've been meeting with our parking director, Tammy Horn. She's ready to come up and discuss the changes that we'd like to make.
Hello.
hello.
Yeah, the changes that we're going to make here with the date. Start with the dates and if there's any questions, we'll answer them. Okay?
Okay, when, back in 2016, when they changed the late fees for the tickets, they determined that they wanted to assess two of the late fees by the date. The first one was November 10th. They wanted to add $10. And then the second one was $35 on December 1st. But the computer program that we have now does not allow us to do that by the date. It'll only let us do it by the days. So I'm asking if we could change it so that we could do it by the days.
The number of days versus the date.
Because if we do it by the day or the date, we have to physically go in and change each ticket individually. It's a longer process.
I don't think anyone's going to have an issue with that.
No. Any questions?
Yeah, I guess my main question, besides changing the, from number of days, dates to number of days, which I totally get, it looks like total late fines went from starting at $5 and capped out at $70. And now we're starting the total fines at $50, capping out at $145.
Yes, I proposed that we adjust the late fees, but he asked me just to speak of the dates first.
Okay.
I have it here.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. The fee structure hasn't changed since 2016, and if I remember correctly, I believe it went backwards just a little bit. Instead of being raised, I believe they lowered it. But our fines are lower than Rehoboth. They're lower than Bethany, and I believe Lewis as well. I'm also, with the fee structure, I've changed it from going up after 7 days to going up after 10 days. I changed it from going up after 20 days to 30, and then from 30 to 60 days. I also added, we're sending the tickets to collections now, and instead of the town absorbing the collection fee that we're charged, we're adding that last and letting the customer pay the fee so that we don't lose the money for the ticket.
So is that 120 days, does that include the collection fee?
Yes, the $45, the last.
The last one, so the last $45 is actually the collection fee. 'Cause you're
Yeah.
sending it to collection. So you're really, from a town perspective, you're capping it at 75 and 100 on the total late fees. And then the the last line is for the collection company that comes in.
Yes.
So 75 and 100, and it was 70. Okay, all right.
Clarification, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, and I guess when we get into late fees and things like that, if I recall the discussion from 2016 on this thing, this was, the fines got higher, receivables sort of grew at the same time. More people didn't pay, and it became more of a problem, which is, I think, why they lowered it in 2016. I could be wrong on this one. It's going back 7 years. So, I mean, from a receivable standpoint, with this collection process we have, is that working well for you?
Most of the ones that we've given them so far are kind of really old tickets, so I don't think they've gotten that much actually collected. But I've been working on changing the letters, and I haven't been able to send them the other ones just yet. But before the season starts, I'm going to work on getting them, getting us closer to getting up to 2022 cent. That way, the tickets that are closer to the current year, they usually do get more. But from 2022, we only have, I think it's 364 tickets that aren't paid.
Wow.
And that's only 7.6% of the tickets that we issued last year.
7%.
So there's two things part of the ask of council right now. One is to adjust the mechanism in terms of assigning late fees based upon number of dates versus a day cutoff, which it seems, and then the second is the reasonableness of the increase in the fees.
Can we do two motions on it? So let's motion to approve the first one, making it days versus date.
Embodied in the same ordinance.
It's in the one ordinance together, right?
Motion to approve the ordinance, unless you're
As
having an
a
issue
whole.
with the fees.
No, I don't.
Okay. So, do
I'll motion to approve the ordinance.
I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
Number 12, discuss possible vote to amend section 4.5 of the Dewey Beach Employee Handbook regarding accrual of paid time off. I know Ms. Hall's here. I think I can give you a quick summary. With the new chief coming into town, we've been trying to find ways to not have different policies in regards to what happens with the police and what happens in the admin side. And the police have always accrued at a day basis, while the admin has accrued on an hourly basis. And so what this change does not give more PTO to anyone. It just says that as you accrue, you're accruing at 1.5 days per month versus accruing X amount of hours per paycheck. So
I just have one question. Does this have any impact on people who say they flex and they work 4 10-hour days versus 5 8-hour days and things like that? Does it affect the total amount of paid time off of people who don't necessarily work 8 hours a
Okay,
day?
so
5 days a week?
the chief has come to me and we've agreed that the shifts are going to be 12 hours and the chief can explain why it's safer for not only the community, but for her officers.
So we've switched to a 12-hour shift plan from 7 to 7. That way I can have 2 officers working at night with the staffing that we currently have. We're still not at the point where we have 2 every day, but we're getting there. As far as the leave, so if you're on a 12-hour shift, if you're doing the leave per day, you would take 1 day of leave versus having to take a day off versus the people who work 8-hour shifts. So it's just always different between the police department and civilian staff because they work an 8-hour, 5 and 2 8-hour shift where my guys work 12 hours. So they would just take, to take a day off, they would take 1 day off instead of having to take a day and a half off. So that's what we're looking at.
So I'm trying to understand, I just want to understand if we're changing the amount of leave someone's entitled to in terms of the total number of hours. And if someone's working 12-hour shifts, they're working fewer days, but they're getting the same number of days off. So it is an increase in the total number of hours of leave employees are getting. Am I interpreting that?
I think it's the other way around. It's the police have always been at a day and a half, at the day, using a day for, versus the hourly. Now it's the
Police have
ad-
always been that way.
Yes, and now it's the
So now
admins that
admin
are gonna be
going
on the
that way.
same.
Okay, I gotcha. So
same
your
accounting
team's
perspective.
always been on this day's
Yes.
perspective, okay. Seems kind of normal to me.
Commissioner Persinger.
Chino wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, go ahead, let her go ahead.
The amount, whether it be accumulated 5.54 hours per pay period or 1.5 days a month, is exactly the same. It's 18 days. And if we had them, the whole thing was, as the chief said, making sure that everybody, no matter which type of shift you work, you still get the same equivalent amount off. The person who works a 12-hour day is, he or she should get paid to take off for that same amount. That was the only thing. We were just trying to make it equivalent across the board so that everybody was just, and it's truthfully, it's going to be easier on me keeping track. So it's a selfish thing there.
And one other thing, we ran this by Diane Campanelli, who's our HR consultant, and she agreed with us changing it to this new policy.
Commissioner.
I would just say, first of all, I don't think I've encountered a policy that's quite this generous. I mean, this is a very generous employee policy. To have a new employee walk in the door and start accruing vacation time at the equivalent of 18 days a year, and also get 18 days of sick leave is very generous. And I hope that when we start talking about salary comparability levels in the future, that we include some of those fringe benefits as well. I'm not sure the other jurisdictions are quite as generous. That's just an aside, and I'm not looking for a response, but let me just ask my question first of all. Let's say the advantage of doing this in terms of hours, if an employee wants to take a couple of hours of annual leave, they want to leave early on Friday to go somewhere, or they just want to take a couple of hours of sick leave for a doctor's appointment, how will you handle that?
In quarter day amounts.
In quarter days? Okay.
Yeah, and this policy, that 18 days was in what we put it, which y'all approved in 21. It has been in effect long before. And it is very generous, yes.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that you're changing anything, and I'm just noting that it is a generous benefit.
It is very generous. The town is very generous.
And as I'm sure it's out there in terms of our recruiting docs, that you don't have to, like some companies that you had to wait a year.
Right.
Or you only have 10 days vacation, so.
I frequently remind my people that we have generous leave, that we offer a lot.
So,
Just another reason to work here.
so
That's right.
I realize that nothing's changing, so I'm just asking just for my own knowledge. So when you move to 12-hour shifts, each employee does 3 a week? Is that basically what each police officer
The
does, 3
shifts?
shifts a week?
It rotates. It's like 3 on, 2 off, 2 on.
So it's some blended
2
thing to get them to
off.
40.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
blended.
Okay.
And the new shifts allow for officers to actually get, they get a weekend off every
Right.
week and a half. Before, it would take them like a whole month to get 1 weekend off. And I
Right.
think that's also gonna help mental health and everything through the summer, which we're so busy every weekend, that at least these guys will get a weekend off, every 2 weeks, so that they won't have to wait a whole month to get a weekend
Yeah.
off.
So the effect of it, and I'm just saying this so everyone's clear on it, the effect of it, it sounds like, is 18 hours of accrued vacation, 18 hours of accrued sick leave per month per employee, which again it's a lot to people saying it's a lot, but we're not changing anything. So I'm
No.
No, it's the same when I got here. It's
Yeah.
been
It's
that way.
18 per year, not 18 per month.
18 hours. No, 18 hours.
I want that job of 18 per month.
18 hours.
18 days per
No, I'm
year.
not talking about days. I'm talking 1.5 days a month is 18 hours. So it's
okay.
so it's over 200 hours of sick leave and over 200 hours of vacation per year for each employee
12.
when you multiply it.
12.
No, because each day is 12 hours. That's the point I'm getting at.
The seasonal, that's the officers.
I'm just pointing out what
Yeah,
the total.
I understand.
Okay.
So basically, the officers will have to take one day off instead of having to take a day and a half off.
Right.
To get a day off.
All right. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 13, discuss possible vote on resolution to approve the town landscaping contract.
Yeah, thanks,
Town
Mr.
manager.
Mayor. So when I got here, we had and it was $32,000 when I got here. I've reevaluated what I thought we could have our own maintenance people, a landscaper to cut the large areas around town. We did that. We tried it last summer. It worked out very well. Went back out this summer and got the one bid in from Cutting Edge, which is in front of you today. You can see the areas in the bid that they would accept on doing. My recommendation is that we go ahead and hire Cutting Edge for the amount that's in their proposal for the areas that they will be responsible for. That is all Bayard Avenue from Bellevue up to Route 1. It is all King Charles from approximately Clayton Street down to Chesapeake Street on both sides. It's also spraying for weeds in the middle of this. Also for spraying weeds in front of Town Hall. Again, we've gone from 32,000 down to 20,000. This year in our budget, we budgeted 27,500. So we do have that 7,500. And also with the difference, and I know we'll talk about trash next, the 24,000 or so that we're going to spend on trash this year, we can apply some of the money from the landscaping that we're saving to that also.
Questions of town manager?
I have a question, please. How does watering of the stuff happen? Like, we have plants and stuff in the medium. Do we have sprinkler system there? Who
So there
waters?
is an old system that is in there, and that's something that with DelDOT, that's one of the, so we met with DelDOT on this new project about a month ago, and that was one of the things we want them to incorporate in their upgrades, is redoing the watering system in the center islands. Right now, down in front of Salisbury Street in that area, you'll see that we have a hose reel down there without a hose on it right now. That is one of the areas that you can put a hose on and manually go out and water that. The county actually owns the water that comes through those. We own, between us and the county, part of their funding will come through and redo those lines for us and make it so it's almost like an irrigation system instead of us manually have to go out, put a hose on it and water them ourselves.
And so town staff currently does watering?
It does. It's not included in this contract.
Okay.
It's
I just
not.
wanted to make sure somebody was watering because it looks really bad if it's just there. Thank you.
Mr. Bursinger.
This is a minor comment on the resolution. Paragraph 9, I think, in the resolution appears to have come from the RFP because it talks about proposers must disclose the name of any town officer, et cetera. I think that probably should be changed to refer to the provider.
Provider.
Yeah. And you have the same issue, I think, in the trash contract.
In the trash one,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other comments, council? Without that, can I have a motion to possibly, motion for the approval of the town landscaping contract?
Motion with Gary's comments on section 9. Or the
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 14, discuss possible vote on resolution to approve the beach trash collection contract.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We put it out, we had 6 people send us in proposals. We asked all 6 to come in for interviews. Only 5 came in for the interviews. Myself, town attorney, town clerk, and assistant town manager sat in on those interviews. I've told the 5 different groups that came in what the questions would be. We had those questions on evaluation sheets, and for each one, $4,750 up to $100,000 for trash, and there was everything in between. I believe that the current is my recommendation. Currently, Mr. Nelson Warren also operates the beach rake down in the mornings that you see. He is very familiar with the way trash has been handled He has watched our vendor in the past do trash on Dewey Beach, and you'll see him do it the exact same way. In fact, trash cans that he uses will probably come from the prior vendor that was doing trash. You'll see him go down the beach with 30 cans on there. He'll take a full can, put it on, take an empty can and put it off. And they'll go down and do that throughout the whole summer. We are very satisfied with his answers. He is right here, a local person, and he does have experience with working on the beach. He does have backup equipment, and he does have backup employees.
What up for council?
So I only have one, I guess, comment / question is, I'd like, if we approve this, for you to get from him the rate if we need additional collections or additional cans. Whatever is acceptable to you is fine, but just have that kind of in advance, just because of how he said he was going to do this stuff.
Mr. Warren's here. If you'd like to hear from him, he and I have discussed about putting extra cans on the beach when necessary. We've discussed when there's weather, about him responding out to make sure the cans aren't being blown down the street, and he has agreed to work with us on that. I don't know if you have any questions for Mr. Warren.
That was my only real
Okay. The proposed contract calls for collection 4 to 5 days a week, as I understand it. Is that correct?
That's correct, but as I said, we've discussed, depending on the amount of trash that are in the cans, it could be more than that, or it could be less than that.
Okay.
And Mr. Warren's very flexible on that.
Okay, so he's basically available on call
Work
to a certain
with us.
extent.
Yes.
Okay. I note also that disposing of all the trash and recycling at dumpsters provided by the town. Where would those be located, and who would empty those, and is there an extra cost
Yeah,
for that?
so GFL currently empties 2 dumpsters that are down by Ivy on Dagwood. They were there when I got here, and the previous concession vendor that did trash, he was taking the recycles down to one of those, which are recycles. And then sometimes, depending on how heavy traffic was, because he was trying to take it out to the landfill, he would also use our dumpster. So depending on how full those dumpsters get, or how fast they get, it would cost GFL, it would cost the town additional funds possibly to come in and empty those, up to $300 every other week.
Okay. All right, thank you. But there wouldn't be any new dumpsters?
Right.
Those
No,
would be-
no.
They're existing, okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, come on up.
Yeah, come on up. Let's get to meet you. We see you driving by every morning, but. Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Mayor and the commissioners and the council here for considering my proposition. Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with beach services since I was 21. You know, it's a very seasonal business and it has been complimentary. I'm actually also a full-time farmer. But I've always wanted to get involved with this, and last year I struck out on my own, and I do currently operate a surf rake and a tractor, doing servicing in several smaller communities. But this is certainly, you know, the largest contract I've taken to date, and I aim to do the best job possible. And like I could just say thank you again. If you have any more questions, I guess there were some concerns about how fast beach replenishment is moving. And I mean, Mr. Lyon, you know, we discussed fastening, securing those cans to the sand fence, but there's a possibility of no sand fence being there by the time we get started, but we'll figure something out. So, but other than that, is there any questions for me?
None by me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to vote on the beach trash collection contract?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 15, discuss possibly vote on a resolution to approve the current comprehensive plan for another 5 years. Mr. Persinger.
Yes, we have been asked by the state to let them know whether or not we're satisfied with our current comprehensive plan and list of objectives and actions that are embodied in that plan. And we were not able to schedule a meeting of the Comprehensive Development Plan Committee, but I did send out a request to each of the members asking them to review that set of objectives and actions and to let me know if they had any concerns about the need to make any changes to the comprehensive plan. I did not get feedback from anyone that was substantive enough that would actually require revisiting the plan. So I'm very comfortable with the resolution that's suggested here to continue this for the next 5 years before we engage in the painful process of doing a new comprehensive development plan. That's it.
That being said, can I have a motion?
I think it's a great idea. Motion.
Second? Mr. Givings, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Also passed unanimously. Number 16, discuss possibly vote to amend and restate the Dewey Beach virtual meeting policy to abate the restrictions for committee, board, and commission members participating remotely. So everyone's reviewed the document that I believe Commissioner Persinger put together. You want to just have that?
Yeah, a few comments. We passed this policy some time ago, and I don't know exactly when it was. I don't have it dated. It was sometime
During
COVID, I think. The latest information is that the governor is going to lift his emergency order sometime next month. And if that happens, that means that we have to stick strictly, as a baseline certainly, to the FOIA regulations that are publicly available. So what I've done here is suggest some changes to our existing policy. And that policy has some more rigorous standards, I think, for bodies like this group and for others that are established by either the town charter or in the town code. And particularly for us, I think it's important for us to have a quorum here present. It's a little disconcerting if anybody's ever attended a congressional hearing and they watch the witness talking to the chair of the committee or somebody sitting in for the chair and there's nobody else in the room, perhaps some other witnesses. It's a rather disconcerting way to conduct business, and I hope we would not fall to that sort of level of participation. So for Town Council Board of Adjustment, I think it's at least the current policy, that I've not suggested changing that. A quorum of the commissioners or members must be present at the life-saving station or other appropriate location where members of the public can attend and electronic means of communication are available. For the Planning and Zoning Commission, and for the Audit Committee, I've suggested a change here that I will raise any new board or committee that may be established by the town charter or code. I made that change because the investment committee is listed in the town code. It's not formally established by the code, but I don't think our standard has to be quite as rigorous for them. I think we could have their requirements for participation be a little less rigorous than it is for either P&Z or for the audit committee. I think it's particularly important for P&Z because they interact with the public. They have presentations regularly. There are visuals that are very difficult to understand if you're just watching it, watching the video presentation. So the suggestion there is, again, this is the existing policy, a majority of the number of members constituting a quorum must be present at the life-saving station. So if your quorum, if you have a quorum of 3 to have a meeting, if you have 2 people there, you would satisfy that requirement. For everyone else, basically the suggestion here is that at least 2 members must be present at the life-saving station or other appropriate location where members of the public can attend an electronic means of communication. That's a bit more rigorous, I think, than what the state FOIA requirements are. There is a requirement that you must have an anchor location, and that means the physical location within the geographic public body that's open to the public, and at which one or more members of a public body attend a virtual meeting. As I read that definition of anchor location, that says to me that you have to have at least one person present at on the public body, present at that anchor location. So you could not have a solely virtual meeting. I believe that's the way it should be interpreted. Others may disagree. So that's the background of the changes that I proposed.
So to get really, may I?
Yes, you may.
To get very specific, could you use the investment committee as an example? There are 4 members on that committee. 1 member from the committee, which would not be the liaison or the town representative, would have to be here.
Yes. Well, that's the FOIA requirements from the state. This policy says 2 people. That obviously can be relaxed. You can go back to the state requirements as a baseline and just require 1 person.
I mean, I'm okay with this. I think it's a reasonable policy, and I think that something is lost when it gets too virtual, you know? So, and it gives people, but it's also flexible enough so that people feel like they can serve without feeling the need that they've got to be here 100% of the time.
And is there a way to have this communicated to all the committees?
I think that one of the things that Kate is working on is an overall communication on, you know, joining committees and how the committees are run and how, from a process perspective. And so we can include this as an additional slide in that presentation for new committee members.
I was also thinking for current committees, because
We can get it out to
the
everyone.
investment
Yeah.
committee's next one is scheduled, and I think they're going all remote in July, was their plan, and they would need to know.
Okay. The only item here, which is more of a, is us changing the word life-saving station to town meeting place, and only because as we move forward on the future town hall, we'll have the meetings there.
Yeah, that's good suggestion. Yeah, I'll motion that, include your language as far as the town meeting space.
The second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
Good suggestions, Gary.
Number 17 was removed from the agenda. Number 18, discuss possibly vote to select an official town tagline as recommended by the Marketing Committee. I'm going to ask Paul to give us a little bit of an overview, but I didn't, you know, we did hear comments from Jason Wilson earlier. Before you go into this, Paul, I just want to, because this was an email received, so just put it on the record. 1:20 today, which he has supplied the town a trademark/licensing agreement if we were to move in that direction, to allow us to use that tagline on certain things. But why don't you go through your spiel?
So there's a whole lot that marketing did on this, and you know, we got 1,650 responses back, which is that's just a whole lot of stuff to go through. So every committee member took their share of them, and they came up with their favorites. And then they discussed them where they were common. They said, okay, you know, 4 people like all the same tagline, so yeah, let's include that. So they've recommended 8 to us, one of which is the Dewey Beach A Way of Life that currently exists. You know, when you think of a tagline, you know, I'm like, what's it for? Like, why do we have one? What's the purpose of it? And, you know, it has to include some things. So first of all, you know, to me, this is sort of the framework to build a tagline was, you know, it had to send a positive message. So whatever taglines they were going to recommend, just make it something positive. It had to be inclusive of the whole community. You know, we have some conflicting things. You know, we talk about, you know, family friendly, and we got people that like they don't have families. They come down here and they have a good time at some of the places. So you want to try to be inclusive of everybody's thing. And then thirdly, it's represent the current demographics and what's looking like our future demographics. Like today we have 1,600 homes, roughly, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, 630 rentals. So there's roughly 1,000 properties that are first or secondary homes for people. So, I mean, much different than Dewey Beach in 1981. So, you know, when we look at that trend has really grown significantly over the past few years, where it's, you know, becomes really more of a home place versus, you know, I remember the days that this was a Friday and Saturday night town, and, you know, that was it. There wasn't a whole lot going on Monday to Thursday or Sunday through Thursday. You know, and even if you look on Sundays, you know, Bonnie, you could speak to this, you know, how many people were in group houses? I don't know how many group houses we have left, but 15, maybe 16, somewhere around that range.
We'll give you that list, Chief, so you know we're there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But, you know, but people would stay on Sunday and then, you know, go on a red eye and get home. But, you know, that's really changed. There's some people here on Sundays, but not like there used to be. So I think that, to accomplish the goal of a tagline, I think we have to look at our demographics today along with these other things. So Kate and I did a little exercise, and we went through all 1,650 responses to see which ones had the right words in it. And hang on a second, let me pull this up here. So the first one, surprisingly, or not surprisingly at all, beach, the word, if you're going to put a tagline together, like what are those positive words? What are we trying to say? Even if you look at a way of life. So what drew people to like that one over the years? Was it the word a or the word of? Yeah, we'll skip those, get rid of that. But way and life were two of the key words in that tagline. So if you look at that tagline, you say, what resonated with people? What made that become popular over the years? So if we look at the responses, because the responses would show what all 1,650 people were thinking of them telling us, as opposed to us saying, yeah, I like that one, or I like that one, and I don't like this one. So beach was first, 706 responses, which I'm surprised. I thought that would be closer to 1,650. Fun was we'll throw beach out because Dewey Beach, I mean, it should have been in all of them, right? So really the first one, the word fun was in there. Second one was life. There was about 30, 35 responses of people that said, don't change it, just keep it a way of life. So that, there's definitely a lot of people like the one that we have. Sun is the next one. So it goes fun is number 1, life is number 2, sun is number 3, bay is number 4, mile is number 5, memories is number 6, best is number 7, good is number 8, summer is number 9, ocean is number 10, sand is number 11, and love is number 12. And it went from, if I went from fun on down, went from 163 commonalities down to 29. At that point, we stopped. So, okay, these are the dozen words that we should probably, I wouldn't be opposed if we kick this back to marketing and saying, all right, let's take a second look at this and say, are we defining what some of these words are? Additionally, I went to Carol Everhart in the chamber, and I asked Carol and her team to, take a look at what we've recommended so far, and what sort of fits what the Chamber of Commerce is doing too. So I just wanted to get that perspective as well. So it's funny, the one they liked had 2 of the key words that were at the top in there. And this was before we even did that exercise. So it was sort of like, well, I didn't really look at it that way, but now that I did, it's like, because I think Carol and her team do a wonderful job, and that's their life. They're driving commerce for this place. The hang up, and it may not be a showstopper, is, once you have a tagline, and let's say, in today's world, they're going to, promote it through social media, and you're going to hashtag it. And when you click on, Dewey Beach, it takes you somewhere. So right now, if you go to a way of life, it takes you to a way of life property management company. So like Ocean City promotes their rental business, where if you want to rent a house in Ocean City, in a number of towns, you go to the town's website and you click on it, and it tells you, who has properties, who has a business license, all these other kinds of things. So there's a lot you can do with it if you actually use the tool of having the tagline. So, part of it's the marketing side of it, and the other side of it is what are we going to do once we have it, and hopefully we can work through how you direct traffic that it's coming to us. I wouldn't want to farm every possible person that wanted to rent a house to one business in town.
So thank you for that not brief overview. And I'm kidding.
We were ahead of schedule.
I know. I figured you had the time. I think when the gentleman, Mr. Wilson, came in earlier, he did make a comment that this contest or this agenda item has created a lot of traffic, and obviously they've done well just by the fact that the way of life is being reviewed. Based upon what I just heard from you, what I'm hearing is to send this back to marketing, to have them come up with their own version of this.
Right.
which I don't know that we can
But I'd-
use that as a, well,
I'd like to do it if we can give them some guidelines.
Yeah.
To say, do we like those 12 of the highest hits?
yeah, I think that's a great, anytime in corporations, they used to have to do this, you have, their word clouds, and the biggest words would come up, and this is your word cloud is indicating, obviously,
Word salad.
and you want to say, Dewey Beach, the beach. I mean, that doesn't sound like a great tagline.
We got a
but,
beach and a bay. We got them both.
But administratively, what I do hear from you is that we're not going to necessarily vote tonight on a
We
specific
could. I mean, I'm just
tagline.
thinking I wouldn't be opposed to kicking it back too.
Is it okay if we do that, even though it's not written that way on the agenda? Of course. Okay, just want to make sure.
I guess my main comment on this is, I think we can do one of two approaches. And one approach is for us to pick a tagline and make it the official town tagline. I don't think, as a matter of policy, that we should be making something official that is owned by a private third party who charges for it. I just think policy-wise it's bad. If we decide we don't want to have a new tagline, I'm okay with that, but I don't think we should vote on something that's privately held to be official. I love your word cloud. I thought that was just fantastic that you did that. Fun beach life, I mean, those are three great words to describe
Right.
Dewey,
Okay, can you go trademark that right now, just so we have that?
I mean, I'm fine with whatever you guys want to do, and if it goes along either of those types of things, if just they say, okay, this is our tagline, and we vote for it, that's fine. And I'm also fine if we just say, hey, we don't want to rock the boat or whatever, and we just end up not making an official tagline and just letting people do what they do. I'm fine either way.
Gary?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I like your point, and I was concerned about it too, about, in essence, aiding another entity to really make money off of this. I mean, they would be the sole wholesaler, and that was really the reason I asked the question, for any merchandise that has that logo on it.
And to your point from last meeting, it's not that our intention is to make money on the tagline. This is not for us to compete with other stores or other entities here in town, but to own something that's uniquely Dewey and sends the right message to the communities.
Right. What I guess what I'm not sure about is where we go from here. I mean, I had some top possibilities, but that doesn't mean those are necessarily good. I'm not a big fan of word clouds, but that's okay. I guess my question is, what would we use as guidelines if we kick this back to the marketing committee? Would we tell them, you guys have to develop a slogan that uses some combination of the words in this representation of a word cloud? That's what we would tell them to do?
Yeah, or ask them to make us, review what they've recommended and see how the responses that come in with those words, if they want to readdress that and say, hey, you know what, we're going to revise what we're sending over to you.
Using this as a guidance to come up with a 3 or 4 word tag, like we know what our neighboring communities have, but again, something to uniquely do. The only thing I'm going to ask for somebody to make a motion to send it back to marketing, but I also think that we put this out as a contest and ask for people to submit. So I think there also needs to be an award given, being that people have taken the time.
Yeah.
So is it possible to also ask the marketing committee to identify those that, what tagline
Most closely resembles.
and where it came from? Because I don't think it's fair that people participated and didn't receive their free parking pass.
Well, that's true, I agree. But we haven't picked, marketing's going to make the recommendation. We're going to pick what that is. And once we pick who it is, then we can give it
Okay,
award.
that's fair. All right. I just want that on the record so that we're not forgetting about everyone.
Somebody's still going to get a free parking pass.
Okay.
So I would like to motion that we send it back to the marketing committee with the parameters discussed for them to give us our choices with that.
Second. We have discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We've
you
got
wanna say
4 ayes and
nay or
abstention.
abstain?
Okay, I'll go ahead and say aye.
Okay. You don't have to.
No, I know.
You just have to say something.
I do, you're right.
Number 19, discuss possibly vote on a proposed design of the public right-of-way adjacent to the restaurant at 1818 Coastal Highway referred to as Starboard Claw. Town manager, you want to go first? And then we have Mr. Montgomery here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over a year ago, myself, Jim Dedes, and Dawn Hanks met with several different people that live on Bellevue Street on the ocean side. They raised concerns about at that time, it was Hammerheads, about the parking there on the corner. You know, our town code parking spaces are supposed to be 9 by 18. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of them that aren't 9 by 18. But when we have an opportunity to address those problems, especially if it's a safety concern, and we have an opportunity here, there's a change in the property, there's a change in the dynamic of that corner. You know, what I did a year ago was I took away those parking in that corner. If you remember, I put plastic posts in there and made it bicycle and moped parking before even the Starboard Claw had purchased that, back when it was Hammerheads. And I had decided at that time, based on the people that live on the street, based on the safety concerns that I had for that corner, that there wasn't going to be any parking on that corner. And that was out. So the measurements actually on that corner where the previous parking spots were, it was approximately 15 feet. And I don't know if you're familiar, but when cars did park there, place and the number of people. So we put a bench on the north side, but this is a nice area. My suggestion was after the construction was done with the Claw that we run and make that again, moped parking, bicycle parking, and put benches in there. Mr. Montgomery has approached me and said, pavers in there. And we said you had to do a building permit for that. We have pavers around town that are in the right of way in front of people's residences before I got here and since I've been here. You know, it lets the water go through and it looks nice. Sometimes people are confused whether or not they can park there, but it's not marked with a yellow line and it doesn't have a sign that says no parking, and people can park there. So we put in the permits to have pavers put in that corner. I thought they looked nice, and the pavers are going in that right of way. And again, those decisions have been made before I got here about pavers going into the right of way, and they've been done. So tonight we have a decision to make. Whether we agree with Mr. Montgomery or not when he comes up and talks about what he'd like to see there in the corner, or whether you down, we are going to have moped parking there in that area and benches. Whether the town pays for it or whether Mr. Montgomery pays for it. The main thing I'm concerned about is that people know that it's public parking, public moped parking, public bike parking, and the benches are there for the public. It's not something for just the Starboard Claw. It's not something just for the ice cream shop. This is a public right-of-way area, and it'll be left open to the public. So if there's any questions from the commissioners for me, I'm ready to answer those now.
The pavers extend all the way out to the pavement,
They
to
go
the
out
pavement of
to,
the street,
they go out to the Del Dot Road.
to the Del Dot Road.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
So is there any width here, or opportunity for pedestrians to be able to walk without being in the road along these
Yeah,
pavers?
along where the parking lot was, there's a 15 feet area that you can now walk, whereas before there was no sidewalk going down Bellevue Street around that corner. Cars would be parked there. If you wanted to go down Bellevue Street, you had to walk around the cars and walk in the street. Now you'll have an area to walk down Bellevue Street until you get off of the Starboard Claw property where parking will begin again. But that's almost 70 feet from the corner. So there'll be plenty of room for people to walk in a safe manner down that street.
So to clarify what Gary's saying, so when I look at the visual and I see the back of the bench, that area behind the bench is a place where people can walk. Basically, that's not a road.
Oh, I mean, it's,
We're
I'm
talking
looking at
about-
I'm not looking at that.
Talking about the gray area.
yeah, the gray area is a sidewalk.
Okay, so that's sidewalk. Okay.
Yeah, so that's not the
Okay.
road, that's the sidewalk, that gray area.
The area where, what you're looking at, if there are benches in that area, that is the side, that's the town right
Can you
away.
pull up on what we have on number 19 on I'm like at 19 Starboard Claw submission, public right away.
I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at that.
So is the gray the sidewalk?
Yeah.
So go back to the first one, please, Kate. Yeah, so you can see there, that is the sidewalk, and where you see the gray, that would be the edge of the roadway.
So that's kind of my question. So if people are trying to walk behind the benches, they're in the road.
Feet from his property line out to the edge of the Del Dot Road that we can use for sidewalk and benches. 15 feet, that's plenty of area for people to walk down that road in a safe manner.
Yeah.
A bench is typically 5 foot long. So if I look at that first bench, that's 5, and it's probably 2.5 feet for the other little extra space. That's no more than 10 feet right there.
The main question really, and I think Steve can just come up and answer it, is are you going to make sure that people have room to walk behind the benches and not be in the road? That's my only real question. So I want to be sure.
That's my question.
Ms. Montgomery, if you want to come on up.
Yeah, I think the town would say you can't put the benches there if it's blocking the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You cannot obstruct the side. We have to be able to have people move through it.
Right.
Off the road.
I was hoping we could slow this whole thing down.
For that.
I prepared. Parking and.
You need that? Do you need one? Oh, nice.
Dozen or so hearings that we had about building.
You cannot hear anything.
And things like that to do this. What we have offered to do is similar, I've judged pictures what we had at the Starboard. The reason we did this at the Starboard, 2 things. The side of the Starboard on Salisbury Street, the existing Starboard number 1, is town property. It's one of those typical old school Dewey Beach stories that before Dewey was a town, it was considered Starboard property for about 50 years.
It's better now since he's near a microphone, but yet it is still intermittent.
She can't hear me. Do I need to press the button? Is it on now? Light on, red light on. It's probably me, these vocal cords. Anyway, the side of the Starboard is town property. And when we had a really nasty tragedy in Dewey Beach about 5 years ago, a man who had a seizure came up and killed 2 pedestrians. The bike racks used to be parked in front of the Starboard. We met with the then town manager, suggested moving everything to the side of the building so that it was safety for kids, children, and everything. You'll see on the back picture on that first piece of paper, it's quite popular, the bike parking. Being on the side, it's safe, mothers, fathers, kids. Hence, when we did this project at Starboard Claw, it was kind of assumed, hey, we'll dress this up and make it nice too for public. The big concern for the town manager, very understandable, it is public, town of Dewey Beach space. There's another rendering, I think the second one, down, Kate, if you could scroll down. We can do anything here. We've done nothing except for done the pavers to this point. We have these bike racks because they're cute, they're fun. Families love them. You know, they're not this typical schoolyard $129 bike racks. You guys are more than welcome to put those in. I purchased these for a nice $15,000, $16,000 because they were expensive to have cut out of steel and made, but I did it because it's cute and fun. you know, Starboard doesn't need a whole lot more marketing in this town. It's pretty well known. But, you know, that was our suggestion, to put those on there. You have scooter parking next to it, put benches. You'll see that sign right there. The town manager kind of mentioned that. I said, we can do that. We can do whatever you want. But public town, so that the people of Dewey Beach know it's for the public. If you're going to the beach or whatever, it is for, because of course it's for everybody. We're not towing bikes if you're not eating at Starboard Claw. But maybe on Tuesday when it's been there for 7 days, but I'm just kidding. Anyhow, that's really it. I mean, it's simple. We can do whatever. We're certainly going to work with the town manager on whatever we do. We're just kind of offering, we have this stuff purchased. We're 3 weeks from opening. It's not in my control. If it was, we'd be open yesterday, but we're getting down to the nitty gritty and trying to get it right. And we have been really vigilant working with the neighbors of that street. They're a very tight bunch. They have their own Facebook group. They have their own everything. They're going to be the first ones invited in for their friends and family nights. And we bought them a mailbox, a cluster mailbox for their street so that they can have that. We put trees up. We've done everything we can do to try to be really good neighbors. And this was one of their requests. They really love what we're showing. So that's kind of where this all came from. I got 45 minutes still to go.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Anything
So,
else?
Mr. Montgomery, I do have a question for you. On the picture that you've given us, which has the existing starboard and the existing bike rack
Yes.
area, was there barriers?
Those
that were there?
are the bollards that will go back when our maintenance guy is done renovating the pizza
I
shop.
was just wondering what.
And they came down for opening weekend to put the bathrooms there, the tent there for best. So they were down for that, but they're going back up this
All right,
week.
so they don't have the same protective area, kind of
Yeah,
like
you
we have
need-
the
you need-
drawing will be there also.
You need that. I mean, we're actually putting them in front of the starboard too with the outside seating because of what happened, we learned the hard way how easily a tragedy can happen.
Council, any questions for Mr. Montgomery?
Yeah, the calamari and clams.
Gary?
Well, it's not a question, but I guess, again, looking back at the picture where the bikes are parked here along the starboard, clearly to get past those, you have to walk out the roadway. Is that going to be the same situation with the bike racks here on the side of?
To be honest, we haven't laid it out yet. We can lay it out with him coming to approve. I mean, I haven't looked at that picture closely, but more times than not, there are bikes everywhere piled in. There's over 100 bikes. There's 16 bike racks. I mean, people aren't always the most courteous when they park bikes. So there are times when there's an enormous amount of bicycles. And this is all new post-COVID. The amount of bicycles now in use after COVID is triple. So
Again, the only concern is that we try to preserve whatever we can in terms of pedestrian walkway, that's clear. And if we can do that, great.
there is no, once you get past Starboard Claw, there is no pedestrian walkway.
No, I
It's-
understand.
it's
But
all-
at least
They're walking in the road
people
once.
are turning in, it
Sure.
helps to have a little pedestrian space there.
And we hope,
Stay out of the way.
I mean, the intention by not having parking spaces jammed and crammed into that property is that for the neighbor's sake, there's not a bunch of cars. I'm sure there will be some that drive down, turn around. They don't want cars turning in their driveways and turning around all the time. It's, it really is a walking bicycle scooter town. Ubering town.
My only comment is that if the council does approve to move forward as as it's been rendered in these drawings, and, the sign that says property, town of Dewey Beach property, I'd ask that we also would add one of the signs to the existing starboard, because I was afraid that my bike would be taken at one point in time.
Yours
Wasn't
might
there.
be.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Montgomery?
No, I like the idea of it. I mean, I think it's a nice look for the town. It doesn't cost us anything, and thank you for being generous in making those, and this makes everything better.
Yes, I appreciate the generosity.
There's been a lot of money poured into this project. We want it to look nice all around, so it will.
We all agree.
That being said, is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
What should we do with the rest of the time?
You yield back.
So, we've got time. Number 20, discuss possible vote to request next steps or approval of the proposed estimates and elevation design for the new town hall and police station submitted by G&B Architecture and Engineering. The Town manager, do you have any comments before I jump into the sewer?
This has been a long process, as you know. When GMB was first picked, we have Dean Townsend on the line. Also, he's been the architect that's been working with me on the actual layout. So what I did was I met with each one of the supervisors from each one of our teams, chief, parking, town clerk, our judge, and the clerk from the court, and said, well, how much room do we need to accomplish what we're trying to do? And then we looked at the amount of space that we had. And originally, we thought our setbacks were going to be a lot further on the south side of the building. It ended up being we didn't need to have the large that we once thought we had on the south side of the building. So I expanded the footprint of the building based on that. We're building something that hopefully will be here for at least 20 to 25 years. Do I think we're going to grow? We are going to grow. Are we that we have for our employees now between now and the end of 25 years? I don't think so, but we are going to grow. Things that come in. So a good example. So right now when we hold an election, I have to find a spot for our election chairperson to have a room where things can be stored that can be locked and put away. Right now in the current town hall, we really don't have that. So somebody may say, well, what's this room for? And for example, right now, that room right now says HR/payroll. Right now, Sheena does both HR and payroll, but we have in the new town hall plan, we have an additional small room off to the side of that, which would be if we hired somebody full-time for payroll, in that position would sit there, or we'd also could use that for the one time a year where we have our elections. So when I looked at the actual layout of the building, and based on the comments from the commissioners about elevating the building up, so if we have flooding, as the water continues to get closer from the bay, we raised it up approximately 12 feet. And then each floor, there was a 10-foot ceiling, and in between each floor, there was an additional for mechanical. So that was 12, 12, 12, and then you had the ridge line at the top, which got us in one of these renderings to 44 feet, and in the other one, the 42. I know that was a concern about us going over a height of 38 feet. So myself and Dean from GMB looked at that, and we could actually bring down the parking underneath to 10 feet. We could bring down our ceilings down to 9 feet and take away enough to get us down to 38. We can make that happen if there is any concern about the height requirements of the town hall. The reason we went with the police department being on the second floor, it's a safety reason for our officers when they are taking people up to the processing area, whether they're on the elevator and the folks are belly banded with their handcuffs down around the chains on the belly, or whether they have to walk them up the steps. Elevator, the least amount of time they're on the steps, that's why they're on the second floor. Third floor is admin, and there are a lot of people that go to the admin every single day. I got Laura who works at admin, and Kate's worked at admin. Not just during the summer. We have a lot of people come in, building permits never seem to stop. That is a continuous day-to-day, every single Monday through Friday, we have people come in. Yeah, it will be somewhat of an inconvenience to go up to the third floor, but it'll be an extra 8 seconds basically on an elevator from the second floor to the third floor. There are a couple options. If you give me the guidance that say, hey, we want to change some things around, I can change some things around. But the space on each floor that we have right now, we need that space. The footprint that we have right now on the lot, we need that footprint. And as you heard from the paramedics, that building out back that'll hold two garages, area bays for the police car and one for the paramedics. And then the paramedics go above that with their quarters. And then above that, we have storage, 30 by 50 storage area. That is needed also. And we've asked the county for approximately $1 million be set aside for that space that they want to build, because that space probably wouldn't be finished for at least 2 years. Right now, the estimates to finish that space, and Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about $730,000 for that space. So we've asked the county for $1 million because we know between now and when it's completed, it could go up with the way the economy is right now. It could go down, but I don't think it will.
Does the 700,000 include the additional EMS garage, or is that just the finishings within the second level? That would be the EMS barracks.
That includes their garage and the barracks.
Okay. Open up the council for questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Comments.
And Dawn, are you on the line? Dawn, the 38 feet, I always stuck in my head it's 35 feet, but how would 38 feet still be within our code? My point is, if we ask everybody else to comply with 35 feet, I think the optics of it are just horrible if we go 35 and an inch, so, yeah, I don't think we should breach our own guidelines.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Hi, this is Dawn. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. This particular building is in what's called a special flood hazard area. And because of that, our code states any building in a special flood hazard area, you start the beginning measurement from where FEMA says it's going to flood, plus the 1 foot that the town adds a mandatory freeboard. So any building in this special flood hazard area, according to table 2, the building can only be 32 feet from that point that FEMA says it's going to flood to, plus the 1 foot freeboard. So if you were in another part of town, not in a special flood hazard area, the building start point is the center point of the road, and you can go 35 feet. Now, when Bill is talking about 38 feet, it is that this particular area has a flood area of, excuse me, a BFE, or where FEMA says it's going to flood, of 5 feet, plus the 1 foot that the town says for freeboard, that makes 6, plus the building, actual building height of 32 feet. Then you can come up to the top level of 38 feet in elevation. There's a difference between the physical height of the building and an elevation. So our code says because we're in this special flood hazard area, the starting point where we start measuring the physical building is different than the center point of the road that it would be, let's say, in the north end of town.
So Dawn, to net it out, are you saying that the 38 feet building height equals the 32 foot BFE plus 1 limit? Is that the net of what you're saying?
The 38 foot elevation, but the building height, the physical measurement, is 32 feet of actual building material.
Just to make sure we're clear, I think one of the main concerns raised by council is the fact that we don't violate our own codes that we put in place, or that we're in accordance. By making sure that the town hall is limited to 38 feet, we are in compliance with our own code. Is that correct?
38 feet of elevation, yes.
Good.
I think the question is, where do you measure that 32 feet from? Well, let me just finish my question. The BFA, the BFE is really based on sea level, I believe.
Correct.
So what's the level of the ground where this building will go? Is it 1 foot above sea level, 2 feet? What is it? Because let's say if it's 2 feet above sea level, then you're only going to get you have to go up an additional 4 feet. And then 32.
I can answer that question. Dean Townsend, GB Architects Engineers, thank you guys for your time today. The site itself, it does vary throughout, but by and large, it's mostly at 4 feet above sea level currently, and the zone is AE elevation 5. So already right there, we had to go up a foot just for that, and then plus the additional foot for your base flood elevation requirements.
So from a design perspective, the minimum that you could put a habitable floor is 2 feet above the ground in this location. Is that basically what you're saying?
Correct.
And then if you go 32 feet above that, you're talking about a building that's 34 feet. Well, 35 feet to include freeboard, right? And so now we're talking about, we're looking at designs where the building is, I see 44 feet. I don't see a 42-foot one. If you
One of
put-
them is 40, one of them is
I see
42, and the other one is 44.
I'm not, which one is 42? I don't see that. And I see 44, and then if you add a cupola on top of that, it's
So I-
another 5.5 feet.
I believe this one is 42, maybe I'm wrong.
I think.
In any case, we're
Yeah, I think-
considerably over the height limit.
There are a few things I was hoping to accomplish from this agenda item, is that there's some clear direction for GMB to take this to the next level so we can finalize. I think what we're all in agreement is that we need to comply with our own code and not necessarily look at it, the exemption that a government entity might have, because we're asking others to comply with that.
I have a strong
But-
desire to. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a hard.
No, I
stop.
get that, but I also believe that us having the ability to have underneath parking is also a benefit to the town, given all the
Well, let me
equipment
ask that
cars
question,
we do
because I think
have.
it's a very important question, because it changes a lot of design aspects. How important is this parking under the building?
So you've got 8 parking spaces in 3 storage areas that would be under the building. If you bring it back down, we would lose that. You still have to have steps going up, and we still have to have some type of ramp to get to the first floor, but you'd lose the 8 parking spots in the 2 storage areas. That would be, one would be for the maintenance equipment, and one would be for the police, where they would put some of their equipment that they use, like their bicycles and other things.
And if, pardon me.
Go ahead. No, you go.
We would lose the Sally Port, right?
No, the Sally Port's off the back. It's completely
Okay.
separate. It's a completely separate building, and we would build this in phases. Building, code enforcement building would be torn down. They would build the new building where the code enforcement is. We would move into that building, and then we would tear down the old building and put the Sally Port in, the paramedics areas on the 2nd floor, and storage on the 3rd.
So
Okay,
I'm still kind of back on my question about why this is important, okay? So if it's just for employee parking, that's one thing. Is there some critical aspect of the police force that the parking has to be under the building? Because there's a Sally Port for getting, potential prisoners, in and out.
No, there's really nothing. We're doing this for the police to park there. I thought the reason we wanted to elevate it was for flooding.
Well, as according to GMB, it basically, I didn't write it down, but I think it's just a few feet off the ground gets us to BFE +1. We would probably want to do more than BFE +1 because flood is tending to go up. But right now, our first floor is at BFE +12 or 13 or something like that. It's way elevated high
Right.
to accommodate larger vehicles and parking.
We could bring it down.
We could, what I'm saying is, if the parking is not critical importance, okay, to us, you can have a building that's, let's say, 5 feet off the ground and still well above flood stage. And you wouldn't have parking underneath it, to your point, but you could also make a building that has a much more accessible presence to the public in general. And I'm not trying to go off on a tangent, but I'll kind of give you my main feedback about this. When we started, it was kind of some exterior steps that went up. You walked in the door, you had a common lobby for administrative functions and for public safety functions. One shared lobby, and it was kind of nice. The public felt like they entered the building. As this has morphed into meeting like different requirements, you now walk into a vestibule, you can go up an enclosed staircase or up an elevator, and then you can get off in lobby A for administrative or lobby B for public sector. To me, that doesn't present to the public as a real open type of thing. It kind of represents as
warmth with it.
yeah, town hall part A and town hall part B, police station. I really liked the initial proposal. It was one of the reasons I talked about this when GMB presented it. I like the idea of trying to have some of the police and admin functions both on the same floor people walk into. I think it's great for teamwork. I think it's great for the public, feeling like they're going into one town hall. Look to the right for the window for this, look to the left for the window for this. I also think it's very, very important that the teamwork that's built over the last 2 years continues. And I like the idea even that police functions have to be behind a badge reader for security purposes. I like the idea of like shared break rooms and floor plans that promote interaction between the police and the public safety and the administrative town people. So from my perspective, if we're trying to meet and have a building that's doing what it's doing, I don't really personally feel like we have to have 8 parking spaces under the building. And we could meet the height requirement easy, still keep nice spaces, and potentially, maybe with a shared lobby between both functions, have something that, the public feels that they're really kind of walking into a town hall that's one common town hall from the street and be able to do that. I don't know what the other commissioners think of that.
Let's open up for, those great points, David. Commissioner Gibbings.
I too like the idea of an entranceway that feels like a foyer. But I also want to figure out a way to keep parking. We are a walkable, scootable, bikeable town, but not everybody is able to do that. And having parking right at Town Hall for people that need to do business in Town Hall, I think we need to do some of that. And we also have been talking about Town Hall being the place where we'll have our electric chargers, because we don't have any public vehicle chargers in Dewey Beach. And we are going to have to move in that direction. It needs to be secure. So to balance those, I'm not an architect, but.
Gary?
I tend to agree with Commissioner Jasinski. When I looked at the design, I thought it was somewhat off-putting in terms of, not being a welcoming space that you come into at Town Hall, and I think that's unfortunate. The other thing I'm just concerned about, I mean, we first talked about this at a workshop in January of last year. And, one of the goals at that meeting was to agree both on at least a tentative agreement, both on the location for the town hall, which was a fairly easy decision, as well as the size, the general size of the town hall. At that time, we were talking about somewhere around, I think, 12,600 square feet. And about 2,000 of that was actually unused space for some additional uses in the future. And the first look we get at plans were actually more than 50% bigger than that. And I feel like we've lost the concept of distinguishing need from want. And, it's not clear to me that there's full justification for all of the 18,900 square feet in the town and the police, town administration and the police building. That's without the Sally Port and without the EMS. And, I'm certainly not, anybody would be crazy to be against having an EMS unit here in town. I mean, that's obviously quite beneficial, but somebody has to pay for that. And, somebody has to pay for a town hall that's 18,900 square feet. I'm really concerned about our ability to pay for this. And I know there's some potential reliance perhaps on some grant funds, perhaps from the county. I don't know how likely that is. I'm very concerned that we're relying too much on the potential for getting federal money. I think in the current political situation, you could probably get some pretty long odds in a sports betting situation on our ability to be able to get that. So, I'm just concerned that we need to focus again a bit more on need as opposed to what we want. And maybe this whole thing needs to be scaled back just a bit to get it into a reasonable cost range.
Mr. Bauer?
Yeah, I mean, and sort of piggyback on what we said earlier. Yeah, I mean, I think once you walk into a building, we don't want it to be a very sterile type environment where you pick an elevator or staircase. I mean, I envision something where you walk in, you get greeted by somebody. There's day-to-day stuff like you were talking about, how many building permits. Put it right there. Don't make people get on an elevator to go get it. If we know these people are going to come in every day, put it right there. Get it close. I mean, if we could maybe use some of the underneath for parking and some of it just for the welcoming side of it, maybe that's an option. If I look at that ground floor, if the front part of that is just, that welcoming side of it, and then behind it, we could still have some sheds and parking. We don't need to use the whole floor there. And then go up from there. But, I like some of the, if we can share some of the spaces, great. I think that builds camaraderie and, better work environment. Maybe we could put, administration and police on the same floor, just different sides. Something like, sort of like we have today, right? There's the left and the right. Do it on a second and do it on the third floor. My biggest fear is that, and we've done a good job of, we've gotten state money. We're getting hopefully getting some county money. From a town perspective, we're doing a lot. And one of the things that no one's kicked in on, but the residents haven't kicked in any money on this thing. I mean, this is their town hall as well. I'd be in favor, and I agree with Gary. I worry about the money as well. You always worry about the money. How are you going to pay for all this? Because they're all nice, but it's going to cost money to do all these things. Maybe there's a way like we did with the beach match where, you get people to participate in it. Where they, maybe every month, a monthly newsletter, we say, hey, we're trying to raise, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million, whatever we're trying to raise. Let's set a goal for it. And then let's, solicit donations from the people. And I think that, to me, if I know what the money's going for, this isn't general fund stuff, but if I know what it's going for and I believe in that, then I donate to it. And I think most people feel that same way. So I think we can go down that path. And, while we're pursuing federal money and everything else and trying to get costs down and that kind of good stuff. So, I guess all those years of Catholic school, I mean, you just try to get a brick for everything. So.
All right, so it's.
Mr. Mayor, could I add one thing that
Yes,
was
you
not
can.
connected to that? I had talked with our town manager when I looked at the drawings, and one of the suggestions, since we're now throwing out some new ideas, was to make sure that nobody with an interior office had just a door. So if there were ways to do high windows on the interior offices, even if it was to let light in from outside, that I think it makes morale better if you're not in a box.
So I'm gonna try to package everything into one, but I'd ask that Chief to comment on public safety and general administrative shared space. And what are your thoughts?
Well, part of the thoughts on this building are, I know it's going to be a larger facility, but we're actually within 5 years, they're changing it. So every police department has to meet accreditation standards for Delaware standards. So you're gonna have to meet certain things, and we're building actual cells to put people in instead of just a bench. So we currently don't have holding facilities and all that. We need a processing area. That's gonna take space. We actually need a bigger room for evidence, which takes a lot of space. So there's a lot of things we don't currently have, which require a bigger space to do, which is very essential for us to operate. And, when we have prisoners, they should go in a cell, not sit on a bench handcuffed, especially when they're fighting and combative, they can hurt themselves. So that does take a lot of extra space to actually build that and be up to standard where we should be, a place to process, a bigger evidence room. We have that one closet that's jam-packed now that we're trying to work through all that, but we need more space. We need a little armory to store our weapons to keep everything safe, our ammunition and all that. We don't have things like that now. The parking underneath, I think it's very important because there's a lot of times where we have outside agencies come assist us as well, just like we had for St. Patty's, and we had about 8 other officers here from other agencies. They all come separately in cars, or on Memorial Day, and those weekends we have about 10 other so we have 10 more vehicles we have to park. So if we're giving away all that parking underneath, where does everybody go? That makes it quite difficult. We can't have people, try to find parking in the middle of summer,
My parking pass.
at the end of town trying to get to the police station for
Right.
our briefings and stuff. So we really do need the parking space. As far as joint space, it's kind of difficult to do that because obviously with the police department, you have police communications. So you can't have anybody in there. You can't have them in the processing areas and the cell areas. you know, the room, the space where the officers are doing their paperwork for processing prisoners and all that. I mean, all that has to be separated. So really, there's not a lot of space in this building that you could incorporate. I do believe, are we on the same floor with parking and things like that?
Parking, the judge, I mean, there's a lot of,
So
there's a lot.
There is a lot of admin already listed on these plans to be on our floor. And the upstairs is very important as far as that big training room space.
The commissioner's room.
The commissioner's room and that could be used for all our training rehearsals. Instead of us relying on having to call the Hyatt and say, can we borrow space? We can do a lot of our own stuff. We can actually host training also if we have a space to do it. When you host training, you can get free spots in the training. So instead of you having to pay for your officers to attend, we can bring in other agencies to our space instead of us having to go out everywhere else. So I looked at these plans when I first got here, and every inch is accounted for and actually needed. I don't see any extra space in here based on where I came from and all the agencies. I've been in many different buildings and sizes. Everything is accounted for and it's well needed. It's not just that we want it, we actually need it. Especially the prisoner area is so important, the size, I mean, everything, that has to all be just certain specifications to be accredited to begin with, and it's gonna be mandated, we won't have a choice. Because if we don't meet the standard, we won't get accredited. But those parking spaces are huge for us, especially bringing in all the outside agencies to help us. They need somewhere to park. We need places to park our transport vehicles and our vehicles. And that gives us a little room to grow. If we add a few more officers and staff, you know, we have enough space to put everybody in instead of everybody being jammed in such a small space. So I think the way the plans are set up now that I've reviewed, I think it's a great use of the space.
We lost the parking spaces behind the town hall with the new grottos, and then there will be a residential building built right behind the town hall, where we used to park a lot of our summer police cars. When I say that, the 14 or 15 summer officers that the chief is talking about, and then our additional officers that come in on the big weekends, our parking people, our parking ambassadors, they need places to park. We all know Dewey Beach there's a premium here for parking, and it's tough. But if in the first drawing that GMB did, there was parking underneath. If you look at it, there was parking underneath. But if the commissioners are telling me, if you're telling me it'd be easier or not easier, better that we lowered it down, we can do that. And I've talked to Dean about that. And Dean and I have discussed some of the concerns that the commissioners have voiced to me. We can make changes if we have to. There are no frills in this town hall police station. There is no big foyer when you walk in the lobby that has all glass and paintings all over. There is none in this. You walk in, there's a small lobby, get on an elevator, you go up the steps. That's it. If we want to make something a little bigger, it could cost more, and it's going to take away from our current space that we have. It's very Spartan, this new town hall police station. I hate to say it like that, but it is. But if you tell me you want a bigger lobby with a lot more stuff, we can do that. It's going to cost more, and it's going to take away from our current footprint.
So let me talk about the total space a little bit and just kind of talk about some ideas, think about it. So one is when you have one lobby instead of two, that's less room. The lobbies on each floor have to have public bathrooms that are accessible to the general public. If you only have one lobby on one floor, that's the public lobby, then you only have the public set of bathrooms on that floor for that lobby. Right now you have break rooms on both floors, one for public safety and one for admin. You could do a shared break room that everybody uses, which helps promote teamwork. The other thing is most full-time staff have private offices, and a lot of them have room for like conference tables and things like that. You know, I'm not going to say who needs one and who doesn't need one, but common when people are building new offices these days, for the most part, only very senior people have, you know, private office, and a lot of people are in other types of arrangements. So, you know, I do think that there are some ways to potentially economize on the space, you know, overall. That's basically what I was saying.
The chief has an extra area for conference. Our building inspector official has an extra area for conference. She has people come in with plans all the time that lay them out on the tables. She needs that. And then there's the room for the commissioners. And wherever we put that room for the commissioners, the room that's like this, that has to have public bathrooms. So if we move that on the same floor with the two lobbies and we just have we We can work with you to try to make that happen. You're putting a lot on one floor when you do that. If I have the police department with their window, public service, I have the building official, public service, I have the court, public service, I have, I'm missing one, there's one more. And then I'm sorry, Laura, our ad public service, that takes up a lot of space on one floor. If that's the guidance that I'm giving, I will go back with Dean, work it out as much as we can to try to make that happen.
All right, so I've been quiet, so I have a minute.
No, please, yeah.
Okay. I agree with everyone, which is a really nice political way of saying things, because one question I have before I make a statement. The outside, and this for Dean, how many parking spaces will there be outside in the back there? Obviously not where the Sally Port or the driveway in and out. So if you exclude the garage, how many parking spaces are outside the building?
Let's see, you guys currently have about 10 existing. That's right off Rodney. You're losing one to take over for an EMS reserve space. That puts you down to 9 right there. You would gain an additional 8 more under the building, potentially 1 more to bring it out to 9, but right now it's looking to be about 8. So total, you're right around 17.
With the 8 underneath?
8 underneath, sorry, correct.
Right, so just some, I'm just going to try to bring this into a single conversation. From the agenda item was to discuss possible the next steps. To a certain degree, this is the second workshop, since we all have seen these plans relatively recently and where it went from the needs and wants to where we have right now, understanding from the chief's point of view to continue have the accreditation that's going to be a requirement to any of us who've been in town hall. It's not a good space to work. There's nowhere to work. Fitting in everything else, I disagree that I do think what we have here is more of a need future versus a want. That's where I lean in towards that. I agree that from a public standpoint, we should be adhering to the height restrictions that we have set forth, even though we don't have to, according to what Ms. Hinks has put forth in terms of government exemptions. But I do think it's the right thing to do overall. I think if we elect to not do parking, I'm just going to throw this on the table, if we elect to not do parking underneath, then are there other spaces, for example, the spaces that are down at the existing Pier Point Marina that we knew, but we didn't actually know that they were public parking? Can we take that as town parking? Since it's not really a loss because we never had it before, those are an additional 20 or 30 spaces that are steps from town halls. Just something for council to consider, because what we're going to ask right now, and before I go, I also, even though it's not the most utilitarian, I agree that there should be a more welcoming area that somebody walks into. It should feel, I know that all the work is done behind the magical wall, but it should be a place where people feel comfortable when they're walking in, and it's not just service windows. It's Dewey Beach, and this is a different Dewey Beach than it was in 1981, or when the initial town hall was built, which I don't know the history on that. So I would like us to come to an agreement to ask Dean and GMB to bring forth, and we'll get to the cost in a section, to bring forth a revised plan that will either include the parking, or if we decide that it's okay to not have the parking, then we do need to do something down at the end of Rodney Street. The height restrictions, as defined by our code, what that number is, so that he has a clear cut, and what can be or should be on the second or third floor, in the sense of, I personally would prefer that first floor be used with anybody from the public coming in. I'm not talking about prisoners. Public coming in to either go to the meeting room, or to go to the alderman, to buy a parking pass. That's all on the first floor, that they never have to go to the third floor. That that we're then through. It's just, it's going to be the public's acceptance. From a cost perspective, when we had this conversation, I think we were looking at, Gary, your memory is going to be better than mine. I think it was around $5 million, which I think was what our thought was.
We were talking 5 to 6
million.
most recently, yeah. 5 to 6.
And that was before we had any type of grants associated, before we got the $2 million that Representative Pete Schwarzkopf enabled us, three, sorry. That was before that happened.
Yes.
Before we knew that
Yes.
was going to happen,
Right.
There was a conversation. I believe that, I like Paul, I've heard from numerous people who'd be willing to contribute in town to our town hall. I'm sure if we asked Mr. Montgomery to contribute a few $100,000, I'm sure he would do it. But
Kind of regret sticking around. He could have been gone.
As an ex-CFO, or a part-time CFO, is very not like me to say I'm not worried about the money part of it, because when I look at the $3 million that we got from Representative Schwarzkopf, the 2+, and we'll get to the general fund policy of 5, the possibility of the EMS at 6, we get pretty close to the numbers that they already have, they put forth in the budgetary items. So I don't know, and this is, if we go from 18,000 to 14,000, is it going to is it a material difference in terms of the overall cost? And I don't believe it's going to be. But I'll ask, we can have,
Did you calculate that?
no, but I don't think it's a foot to dollar. I think it in terms of the overall cost, I just think there's a little bit element of it's not a linear. If I cut 1,000 square feet, I'm going to cut 1/18 of the budget out. I just don't think that's fair. And as David pointed out, if we have one large versus 2 smaller lobbies, if we've got less public bathrooms on 2 different floors in just one area, there's elements of the design that when Dean goes through this with our direction, there's going to be a revision.
So I have a question for Dean, that's kind of an idea for the commissioners. This is, looked at the ground floor level now that has the parking and the driveway from the back to the front. Is there any reason why we can't have a curb cut on Route 1 and not have a drive access?
Hey, Jim's awake.
That's got to go through
We had that
DelDOT.
No,
And Jim went to that meeting. Jim?
Dean and I both sat in on a DelDOT review of the parking plan, and they had a lot of questions about the parking, the access by the police department into the police area, including EMS, and there was a question about public parking. So they approved it, I think, under caution, but they made it very clear that there was not going to be anything on Route 1, a cut through. So
Right now,
I'm gonna
right
break
now,
that up. And any major changes we do, we may have to go back to DelDOT for approval.
If we were to, good, David,
So
your point
right now,
was.
there is a curb cut for the code enforcement building on Route 1. So they're saying the curb cut has to go away?
Pretty much, yeah.
Gary.
A couple of points. With respect to the cost, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about unassigned funds and surplus. Right now, if we did the entire project as it's envisioned right now, we're talking about a cost of $8.5 million, where we can probably assemble something on the order of maybe 5.5. My fear is that we go down the road with a design that costs us $8.5 million, and we don't get some of the grant money that we're expecting to get, and we're left with a $3 million debt. I want to minimize, to the extent possible, to minimize any debt we have to incur to do this. So that's why I'm saying I want to see this, I would like to see this scaled back so that it's much closer to the kinds of financial resources we know we can pull together. And then if we get the money, particularly from federal funding, that's great. We can use some of the other money that we put aside for the town hall for another purpose. But, I just don't want us to go down a road where it looks like we have the potential of having a big, more than $1 million, $1, $2, $3 million debt. Debt's not free. It is costly. And I don't want to put the town in that situation. So that's one point with respect to cost. With respect to the height of the building, I think we should consider the possibility that we will, in the hopefully fairly near future, make a change to our code so that we increase the amount of freeboard. As much as 1 foot, maybe as much as 2 feet. It's probably the top recommended strategy that you hear from people who are, I think, experts in flood mitigation. It's one of the key things that you can do. So, in order to do that, I think we could plan to exceed our current height limit by a foot or two, with the clear intention that we are going to change our code to make that happen, so that we would be consistent with our own code.
Which is one of the recommendations we had from the workshop on the climate change, was to increase. Yeah, okay.
Which, do you mind if I expand upon that conversation just briefly? We were just invited to participate actually in a recent webinar they just had with Department of Homeland, or not Homeland, but HUD essentially. So Home and Urban Development. They put forth a listening session that just came out the other week. They have a couple more throughout the coming month too, where essentially they are already in the process of expanding upon that for all jurisdictions throughout the nation, and actually looking forward to increase the base flood elevation to about 3 feet for most jurisdictions. They haven't fully come to a finalized conclusion on it, but it's very much in the works in the near future. And from what it sounds like, it's going to apply not only to residential, but also to commercial buildings. So it is something that is already in the talks. They haven't formally finalized the values or what they have, what rules are going to put forth, but it's already a consideration right now. We'll keep you guys updated with that, but that's currently what we're hearing right now from HUD.
So council, can we come to the idea is to giving Dean some clear directives in terms of a redesign. Can we come to a conclusion in terms of the actual height, especially given what you're stating, in the inclusion or exclusion of parking? So just to focus on those two things, because if it's parking's not underneath, then I don't think we're going to have necessarily an issue with hitting of the 35 or 38 or whatever number that's going to be. So does it have to be a vote, Counselor, or is it okay to have an open conversation? Because
No, I don't think it's as formal as that you need to have a roll call and expression. I would put one other thing out, that there are a number of governmental entities that have been in a position where they were hamstrung by their own regulations, and it's not uncommon that happens. And I think it's an optic thing mostly as to whether or not the municipality decides to obey their own zoning. The middle ground would be to go literally to the Board of Adjustment and file an application and invite the public to come in and comment and ask for a variance. And the public has an opportunity to weigh in, and you can hear all that. And even if you get the variance, you can elect not to utilize it if you're persuaded to believe it's a very unpopular thing to do. So that's odd. It seems odd that the entity that appoints the members of the Board of Adjustment would go to the Board of Adjustment, but it is not, it's not unprecedented by any stretch.
It's not an election year for you, right?
No, it's not. And this is, it's certainly not about election for me.
No, I know. I'm kidding.
I think that that's a perfectly reasonable suggestion. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think public input is really important. The history on the height of buildings here in town is not pretty. It has, a long and tortured history, in fact. And I think if we want to go that route, I'm not uncomfortable with doing that at all. It gives the public an opportunity to weigh in, and we can then make a reasonable decision based on that. I'm not as comfortable with our legal ability to exceed our zoning code. I don't see anything like what we have in our existing town code, the governmental exemptions paragraph, which is a totally strange and uninterpretable paragraph, I think. You could read the first paragraph one way and the second paragraph exactly the opposite. So I'm not sure that that's terribly helpful. But again, I think the councilor's suggestion there is perhaps a reasonable one we may want to consider.
I got a question. What zoning district are we in?
RB2?
RB2,
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I'm a proponent of, don't ask other people to do if you're not going to do it yourself. So, I think if we change it for ourselves, we change it for all of RB2, if that's where we choose to go. But whatever it is, I mean, just be fair, we want to do it ourselves, we should allow other people to do it.
The other thing to think about going along with Board of Adjustments, when you really get down to it, we are, in essence, it's a very elevated building with the current design. In other words, lowest habitable floor, instead of being BFE +1, it's BFE +10 or whatever it works out to. So really, what the variance is to elevate the building much more substantially over base flood elevation than it otherwise is required. It's way over, but we're not trying to squeeze in a habitable floor, which is, in flood speak, that's the term they use on that in terms of where you put your structure.
So, that being said, are the next steps, are we in agreement to actually look for a variance at the Board of Adjustments to allow for public comment as we enter the height? And then based upon that outcome would be to determine parking or not parking and where other parking could be, like as I said, at the end of Rodney. The other ask that I have, because I don't want to assume, if we are trying to go, and I don't know where from 8 million, because I was looking at, and I don't know if you were rounding up, Gary, but I was looking at.
Well, the
7.
March proposal for the entire project, including EMS, is $8.5 million.
8.6.
8.6.
8.6.
Dean, how much of an exercise is it for what it would take, or how many square foot it would mean if we were to go from 8 to 6?
It really is just a square footage factor at this point. I mean, let's see.
So you calling me a liar?
No, I'm not. Let's see. If we're referencing, and as the gentleman was saying, the one that's 8.6, so that was roughly about $355 a square foot. So if you want 6 million, give me 1 second here. So let's see. Just to get in range of 6 million at 355, and actually hold up, sorry, let me just say 380 for what we're seeing even now, just with current projects that we're getting bids back separately that's being built. Let's say ideally you want to reduce the overall building square footage to about 15,750 at current market pricing, around $380 a square foot, just to hit that $6 million target.
We are currently at what?
You guys currently right now are about 24,270, and that's including the EMS portions of the building too.
You're saying 15 including the EMS?
Yep.
Correct. If you want to bring it down to the 6 million target, you got to aim for a total of 15,750 square feet.
And can we talk a little bit about what our prospects are for getting money from the county? I mean, again, I think it would be great, terrific to have an EMS unit here and the kind of EMS facility that's in the proposal, but it's sort of hard for the county to come to us and say, we'd like to have an EMS unit here and you have to pay for it. That doesn't seem to be a very
So
good
my
way of doing it.
conversation with the folks that were here, and then with also some other county officials, they haven't committed to anything 100%. But I've explained to them why we are asking for $1 million compared to 730,000, because that building, that part of the building where the bays are going to be and the paramedics are going to be, that's not going to be done for at least 2 years. My concern is if we ask them for 730,000 to commit to that, and then we go to build it, and it's much higher, it's 800 or 900,000, then that's going to be an issue. I think if they tried to buy property in this area and build their own, they definitely want to be part of our team. They definitely want to be in our facility, in our building. We asked them what they needed to be operational. Of course, they wanted to have 2 bays. We told them you couldn't have 1. And so They sat down with GMB and designed that, what they needed. Sleeping areas for men, sleeping areas for women, showers, kitchen, washer and dryer, and they have all that on that second floor. And that's why that Sallyport building is $730,000 if they had to build it today, according to $380 a square foot. And remember, in the March financials that they figured out on this, it's I think it's $1.1 million in contingencies. Right, that they put in there for cost overruns and things. So there's over $1 million for cost overruns built into that right now. I can't say 100% the county is going to give us $1 million, but if they want to be in our facility, they're going to have to come up with $1 million, or at least tell us they'd be willing to go up to $1 million to be in Dewey Beach.
So, my point here is that I would be pretty comfortable with assuming that we'll be able to muster $6 million. But that would not include the EMS facility. If you get, another $1 million, then you're cutting from 8.5 to 7, as opposed to 8.5 to 6, which it's a better cut. It may still be pretty tough to make, but at least it's a lot closer than going from 8.5 to 6.
Just as, so we were so on track to getting this under 3 hours.
Sorry.
We're gonna have to pay somebody a buck.
Motion to adjourn?
So if we reverse engineer the timeline, so we were looking at potentially if everything was approved and everything was in order, demolition in October?
We would try to move forward with demolition in October, have a trailer set aside for parking somewhere in front of Town Hall.
Okay.
So Tammy's team has somewhere to work, and try to break ground in the winter.
And so given that, what is the last possible moment that we can finalize, whether that's going through the Board of Adjustments, looking at this federal grant, federal funding through Senator Coons, looking at Sussex County, at what point, I know that GMB is going to need some time, but I just would put a timeline in our heads as when we would need to.
Well, as part of that timeline, the Coons matter won't have a resolution until probably close to the end of the year, I'm assuming. Is that a fair statement?
That was what happened last year.
So we're in a situation where, as Commissioner Hirschner pointed out, I'm kind of uncomfortable assuming that the answer for that is yes, and spending a large amount of money, and even worse, proceeding with demolition, thinking we're going to get something that hasn't been approved. That's taking a big risk for a very large amount of money. So we have two choices. We can proceed with something that's smaller in scale, that we know we can afford if that money does not come through, or we can wait and see what happens with that money before we basically make the commitment to go forward with something that's larger. To me, that's kind of the binary decision, is do we try to proceed with something that's of a scale and a price that we know we can afford either way, and we go ahead and proceed in the immediate term, or do we wait to make detailed plans until we know we have the additional monies, which would enable us to build something that candidly is sounding like more meeting what our leadership in Town Hall says they need.
Weigh on.
Yes.
The risk part of that whole deal is, are we going to, there's a possibility we sit here 5 years from now and say, man, we're out of space already. We did really need that space. And then at that point, you sank that money into it. Now what do you do? So you have to build another building in behind it or something. But I don't think we want to, let's build it right. Let's not have, 20, 25 years. I don't think any of us want to sit here 20 years from now saying, yeah, let's do this all again.
I can promise you I will not be here 20 years.
Probably not around either.
I mean, in this seat.
I'm even happy with that.
But so money wise, we have the 3 million. We have hopefully, if we could, come clear, that's a reasonable expectation for the $1 million from the county. We saved 2 million, right? That we carry that forward from the previous year. So we have 6. We got 6 already. I think the public needs to kick in something on this thing, right? I mean, we're doing we're doing it all, but for the public benefit. Do we think we could raise $1 million from the public? Can we raise $500,000 from the public? I don't know. We got to start trying at some point.
Is there precedence for public raising and naming rights, Fred? Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I don't have any.
The Jasinski Town Hall for $1 million?
I was not talking about me.
There were donations initially to the existing town hall that the public came up with some time ago when we made changes to town hall. So we have done that in the past. I think for us, for town administration, give us a figure that you all feel comfortable to work with and let us play with that for a while. Because, if 6 million is the target that you all feel comfortable with, then we'll go with the $6 million. If you think we can go to 7, the money's going to be the driver here. So,
I definitely feel with the EMS, 7 is very doable with the EMS.
And I think when I look at an $8.5 million project, when we first had this conversation, we looked at, meeting with the banks, which we did initially, Fulton Bank. Is it possible for us to get debt service in order to accomplish? The answer was yes. We talked about possibly borrowing from the beach fund with an interest rate. Of course, that would go through, we'd go through potentially referendum, but we've had that conversation of sources of funds. With the community that we have right now, I don't think we're going to have a problem getting to that $8 million. I really don't. And I'm not saying that lightly. I really don't. Because I know we don't want to put any, I don't want to put any tax in place.
Right.
Any of us do. But I do think that if we eliminate the parking underneath, that doesn't change the $8 million price tag.
Not much.
Not much.
Yeah, that doesn't move the deal.
So we go to the Board of Adjustments and we figure out let the public weigh in on the height. That's not a money issue. The parking, if the park goes away, it's not a money issue. I think we start the campaign immediately to see how much funds we can raise and look to see the $8 million. Because if we could have the 24,000 or the 18,000 built, I'd feel more comfortable going forward, knowing that we have a town hall for the future and figure out how to get the money, then make it smaller and not have the accommodations that it currently has, with a different design in terms of the welcomingness when you come in from the public. Then the next steps. Are there any right now next steps for G&B? And I don't believe there are, unless David.
I think a key thing is there they have to know what target they're trying to hit if they're going to redraw anything. Otherwise, it's kind of a waste of money, right? So we have to decide if we're going to let them redraw. I don't know where your lines are, but at the current budgetary level, certainly no one wants to see it go up. Or are we asking them that it's got to come down? They've got to draw something that's going to come down, a certain amount. And that's the decision that we have to make if we expect them to come up with anything.
Like a motion for 8.
So a motion to ask GMB to make some redesigns based upon the welcoming for the town, et cetera.
And then as we go down along, let's say some of this money doesn't show up, we can make some cuts at the end. We don't have to make all the cuts today. We can make the cuts as we get closer. Maybe the furniture is not going to be as nice. We'll figure out some way to
it's not
get it under
included
budget. But
So Dean, we're talking more about a town home instead of a town hall, in case that helps as you redesign.
I think 8 million is too much. I would not support that. I think there's too much potential risk in that. The other point that I believe is true is that the cost of demolition is not included in this either. Is that right?
I don't think it is, Dean. Is it on the sheet?
No, we removed it just because the initial conversation was the town wanted to assume ownership of demolition and not have that from the contractor. So we just withheld that from the estimate itself.
Well, that cost is not in there. The cost of furnishing the building is not in there either. So those are some other costs that we have to worry about. I just think 8 million is too much of a stretch at this point.
So when you say 6 million, that, in your mind, Gary, that includes furniture and fixtures as well as demolition? I just want to.
It does not necessarily. I mean, I think we need to take a hard look. I mean, demolition costs, I think we need an estimate for that. I have no idea how much it would cost. I mean, I'll be glad to bring my sledgehammer, but I don't think I'll be able to knock down very much. When I talk about 7 million, I'm thinking 7 million is what I would be more comfortable with, and that would be 6 million that I believe that we can assemble from existing resources or resources that we can draw on. Maybe we could push that a little bit if we believe that we really can get substantial contributions from the community. I would go to 7, assuming that you get money from the county for the EMS unit. If we don't get that, I mean, let's see how we get there.
I don't mean to interrupt, but if we don't get the money from the county, the EMS will not be in that building.
Right.
And it will bring the
Okay.
cost down a little bit. We still would like to have a place where the police can pull into a garage area, but that, basically, it's an apartment upstairs, like a small command post for the EMS.
Right.
But if they don't commit to the money, they're not gonna have
They're
it,
not
so
gonna
it
get
will
it.
bring costs
Okay.
down.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
didn't mean to
a,
interrupt you.
that's a given. We're not, if they don't pay for it, we're not building it.
Okay. So, so maybe I would go to the 6.5 and assume that you get 1 million from the county. That would be my
You
suggestion.
figure 7.5. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, including the county money.
So I realize you're
Do I
kind of
have
putting you on the
7.6,
spot.
7.6, 7.6,
No, no, no,
7.7,
no.
7.7,
I'm asking
7.6,
Dean,
7.6,
so
7.7.
when you look at this, Dean, what do you see the impact being, trying to basically shave 1.1 million off of this?
Are you asking me?
Dean.
Dean.
Oh, Dean,
It's
okay.
3,000. It's 3,000 square feet, right? If he's 380 million.
He's shaking his head, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to essentially get it to that range, we gotta shave it down to about 15,750 square feet total. Just to help bring that more in range of what you guys are talking about.
15,000 for the town portion, not the EMS portion.
Total, both the entire building, so that would include the Sally Port, the actual police, the town hall, everything, all has to fit in within that 15,750 to make it work for that 6 million price you guys want.
We are on a different price point. We are at 7.5, so it's shaving 1.1 million off of this, is what the question was.
So Dean, because I believe it's gonna come out to 3,000 square, I mean, that
I
is.
haven't done the math, but if that's the
It's-
math, 3,000, okay.
So we have a challenge, so the challenge for you is, and we'll decide about in terms of path, is can you develop renderings that would be 3,000 square feet less in total, and also accommodate a more welcoming environment in terms of the people entering town hall. So I think you've heard all of the comments and.
Right. Short answer, theoretically, yes, but right now I don't necessarily have the complete complexities figured out of how it would work that way, but it should possible. We definitely have to thoroughly review this over, see what could be adjusted, and it might even have to come down to a conversation of if there are some things that you guys are willing to do with less of. That's the tricky part of this, but it's definitely something we could look at and reevaluate, and just to bring it back in the range with what you guys are needing.
Is that the direction we want, or do we want to go to the Board of Adjustments first before we?
Well,
It comes back to my other question, the timeline.
So
When
I
do we
think-
need to finalize this
I think-
decision on size and?
I personally think we can have him come up with like this kind of level of drawing that's more of the budgetary openness type of thing to us. Once we have that and we have a consensus, this is where we want to go, we can do the Board of Adjustment. We should assume that we'll be able to get it through, but we don't know, And
Is there a reason why you wouldn't do those at the same time? Like.
well,
go to
you're
Board of
asking,
Adjustments?
can you ask the Board of Adjustment to approve something where you don't even have like how big your box is? You know what I mean?
Well, it's gonna be,
Because
the overall's gonna be height, right? So in the end, the box. is gonna-
Elevation.
Can you be that abstract with Board of Adjustment? Do you have to be more specific?
Well, there's no law that says how exactly specific you have to be, but your case is stronger when you can describe what your difficulty is. And if you can't show what your difficulty is because you can't give enough specificity in your application, then the application is weaker. But I suspect that you certainly don't need to provide, perfect.
I'm fine doing this in tandem, then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't the Board of Adjustment question really depend on parking, the ability to have underground parking? Because if you can't raise the height, if you can't get a variance for that, I'm not sure you can get the building in there within
Well, we
the
don't-
required height limit without that kind of variance.
So we have a height limit, but not an elevation limit?
Depends on what district, it depends on what flood zone.
In RB2, right? So we have.
No, you can go, as long as you maintain that height limit overall. But you can raise it in a flood area of right up to the 32 feet above base flood elevation +1. You can do that. I do have a comment on the Board of Adjustment because we have to establish what our hardship is. And normally the Board of Adjustment makes the determination as to what the appropriate material is required. So, they need something to look at and a thorough explanation on administration's part as to what our hardship is. And that's our responsibility to make.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, what we make the hardship has to do with parking and parking for the public. And either we're building it up higher and they approve whatever that height is that we ask for, or we need to potentially look at the end of Rodney and make that, town parking. So I don't, that's the only other, we've never received revenue from it, but I think that's where this moves. And then if we have Dean come in with a 3,000 square foot less drawing, it's not necessarily about height, it's going to be about shrinking the size of the box.
I would like to respond on the Rodney Avenue parking. I think for the public, that's a long way to walk, especially in inclement weather. I mean, it makes sense. The town employees, we can certainly do it. We'll weather what it needs, but for the public, I don't think we're helping them much. And it is a long ways off, and that's assuming we don't have flooding down there. So.
Is there anything to prevent the town from just taking any set of public parking spaces for its own use and saying these are reserved for town use?
There is, we do have that out in front of the town hall. Currently, we have 10 parking spots out in front of town hall. One is a handicap in the parking lot itself. With this new building, with that Sally Port there, we're losing one to the EMS. As Dean said, that goes on. But there's the spots that are out on Rodney Street. We can do what we want with those spots as the town. We can put up a sign that says, town parking, town employees only parking here. That can be done.
I just think for the police department, having a bunch of squad cars parking all over the street and in front of areas just doesn't look good for the town. It's nice to have the police in one central area, and I think that I just think it makes sense. And I've done this in the past in my old life, and we've tried to keep everything as much as possible on the ground level to allow police and prisoners to come in rather than going through elevators. That's not it doesn't stop you from doing it, but it is a challenge.
Okay. It's a great hour. So, we're in agreement to, I'll keep saying it, we're in agreement to go to the Board of Adjustments, right?
Yeah.
We're in agreement to, post of, doing potentially some fundraising at the town level specifically for town hall, so we can figure out what that number is. And our ask for GMB is to figure out how to potentially shave, with working with the chief and with town manager, 3,000 square feet to accommodate a 6 million versus a 7.5 million, et cetera, budget. Is that the next steps?
Yeah, 7.5, I think was.
7.5.
7.5, including the EMS.
7.5, including EMS. Okay. Dean, is that clear?
Yep, understood.
Okay. We'll just do some fine tuning. Okay. So I guess we don't want to talk about which design, A or B. I'm kidding. All right, do we need to vote on that, Counselor?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Talk about the center entry or side entry.
Yeah, from it, this is, I forgot about that, Paul. When we look at the drawings when G&B put the drawings forth, and the last time, there was, it was one area, like was the corner area. In my mind, and it's if you guys agree, as part of G&B's redesign, I always like to see town hall, like the entryway in the middle versus the left or right,
Yes.
from a symmetry perspective.
Yeah, symmetric.
And if we were in agreement, is it possible to have them also look at making it so that town halls were set, like everything's in the middle versus on the left side or right side?
It's certainly preferable.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
Okay.
you know, but he's.
Is that okay,
he's gonna be
Dean?
Challenged. so
That's
he's-
fine.
You like challenges, right, Dean?
That's what I do for a living. I try to work them out as best as possible.
Okay, so that's also to move that towards the middle. Thanks, Paul. I forgot about that. All right, so 21, does discuss possibly vote an allocation of unassigned funds, surplus funds for slash committee, blah, blah. Number 21, discuss possibly vote on the allocation of unassigned funds, surplus to self-committed funds. This is something that we can table after 3 hours if we want to. I think Commissioner Persiger made a good point in that to me, in that the streets and infrastructure funds are through ordinance, and we wouldn't necessarily be moving there. So this conversation would have to do with the possibility of of either A, and this is for direction for accounting, do we fund the rainy day fund out of the unassigned funds to be fully funded based upon this prior year's budget? Was the first thought process. The second element is possibly eliminating the broadband infrastructure funds, and this was around 5G poles, because we do have those 5G unearned funds that are not being used. The elimination or comprehensive plan, I'm going to ask Commissioner Persiger to comment whether we should keep that 20,000 in there or not. Legal and litigation, we have removed that from an assigned capacity and moved on to the budgetary item, so that actually can be removed from the committed or the assigned funds. Public safety and beach safety are based upon donations and or grants, so there's nothing that we can do there. The capital improvements general was by vote coming out of potentially out of the hotel tax elements going into that, where we can also move those into the town hall fund if be. And then also to move the unassigned fund to approximately 680,000, which would be 15% of the budget. So that is, I know that's a lot that I just threw at you, but that's what this line items or this agenda items for. Is everyone dead?
No,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I think we have to fund the rainy day fund according to our fund balance policy, and that's true also for the unassigned account. And the unassigned fund basically is the place where we pay all the bills out of.
Right.
And on a month-to-month basis, you're really supposed to watch that to make sure we stay at that level. If we don't stay at that level, you have to bring it up to the right level, which means taking some money from the rainy day fund, and then you have to have a plan for replenishing the rainy day fund. So I think going forward, we're going to have a tighter budget situation than we have had in the past. I don't think we're going to, I mean, I'd love to be wrong, but I don't think we're going to enjoy the kind of surpluses we have in the past. If you look at what's taken place over the last couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 months, I think you've seen the surplus. We're actually probably showing a deficit for some of the, I just think, again, we're going to see a much tighter situation there. So we have to fund those. I think there is money that we could put toward what is now $2.1 million. I think we could put some additional money in there, maybe 100 plus. I think we should take all of the 50% of the hotel tax for this coming year, put that to the new town hall fund. That would somewhere around 2.4, somewhere we're getting close to 2.5 perhaps. I think we should also take a hard look at the money that we have in the capital expenditures account right now. What is our projected need over the next couple of years or so? Because there may be some money in there that we could reallocate to the town hall fund to bring that up a bit. Comment about public safety, and I just want to ask a couple of questions about that. I mean, that started last year, the audit was 138,753, and now we're up to about 257. Is that really all grant money? I'm not sure that all of that 257 is grant money. Is there not some Lesso auction money that's running around in there? Is there any money, if you look at capital expenditures going forward for the police department, is there any way that you could fund some of those capital expenditures out of that public safety account? So that we wouldn't have to draw on our other account?
Okay, so that,
We are doing that. We are the And in the capital expenditure budget, which y'all approved with the regular budget, there was for 2 vehicles for the police and 3 vehicles for the police this year. And that was just the basic. To outfit them, we're paying that, we're, for the lights and everything, that's coming out of Lesso. There's grant money that is going in there, but that also, when vehicles are bought, that it goes to the fixed assets, but it also, during the year, increases that fund balance because they fall into that during the year. At the end, it'll all go, gets moved. It's very, I'm still trying to get that.
Yep.
But you had mentioned tabling this. If we want to get the year end closed, I have to have these entries so I can be able to get ready for the audit.
No, and no, we're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna table it. I think what Gary's referring to, with Gary's question is that it comes back to something we talked about prior, which is being able to see the additions and uses, sources and uses of each of the funds and how we went from 138 to 257. And there's also elements that are currently in the operating statement of the general fund, which will be on the balance sheet when you look at the equipment purchases and or uses of CTC funds that should go against the unearned revenue. So the amount of money is going to change in terms of what number we're actually playing with. But I believe that the goal here in this list would be to give Sheena direction to increase the rainy day funds to $2,278,000 to be consistent with 50% of the budget, to eliminate the funding in the broadband or the comprehensive, unless Gary disagrees.
Yeah, and I don't feel strongly about that.
So I think we can just put it as a budgetary item when we need it, to make that zero, legal and litigation zero, to the extent that public safety can be either apply it, or to the extent that public safety's funds, also a plan for that would be asked from the chief's perspective, because if it can be used for any of the elements, not a lot of money, but if it can be used for the elements that's in the police town hall build out, how do we use those funds? And part of that, the motion would be to move our assignment of any hotel tax to the town hall fund going forward. And the last thing is to move the unassigned to 680 so that everything else would go into the town hall fund. So we would see what number we're talking about.
The 375, don't we have to use?
Yes.
If we don't use it, but it's right now sitting in unearned revenue, but we'll never need the full broadband. We'll need the broadband self-committed funds that are currently in fund balance, is what this is about. So with all that being said, can I have a motion for what I just said?
So moved.
And a
It's the
second.
only way you could motion it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, discuss the current process for approval of commercial businesses on the beach and potential changes for the 2023 summer season. Town manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So what we've tried to do this year for businesses on the beach, drawn up, when they come in for their business license, insurance, they have to show insurance. So for a catering business that wants to do business on the beach after 5, I've come up with these standards that they have to apply. One of them is they have to take their own garbage off the beach and not put it in our public trash can but take it with them. They have to make sure all the area is completely cleaned up. They have to make sure, they can't tell somebody that's sitting on the beach, hey, we want to use this area, set up tables and chairs for a party that's coming down. You have to move. Those are spelled out here. So we did it for the catering with the help from Laura. We did it for bonfires. We did it for skimboarding camps. And we also did it for the fitness, any type of fitness. This way, when these different businesses come in, they know some general rules. So we don't have some incidents like we had last year where somebody came down and set up a table and chairs and umbrellas right in front of our concessions on a Saturday and set that up. And then I had the concession vendor calling me saying, why are you letting somebody set tables and chairs and umbrellas up after I've paid so much money to have that service for the summer on the beach? We're having that meeting, as I said earlier, April 28th at 11 o'clock. We're going to go over these rules with them so they understand. But at some point, we really need to reel in business on the beach. By town code, anybody that does any type of with the town. That's the way the code reads right now. So and I know it's kind of late to try to get in front of that for this summer, and I think we made the decision that we're going to handle it like we did, but we really need to at some point. I need to come and work with our town attorney and have some real rules and some things in the code that you can vote on and say we agree with.
Councilors, any problem with putting these ordinances this through to allow kind of restrictions, these agreements? Is there anything from your perspective and freedom of operating?
No, if we're going to continue in the environment that we're looking at this and it's going to be business as usual with some fine tuning.
Fine tuning it. Okay. I agree, Bill. This has been an issue that you've raised several times that we need to reel this in and understand, especially if the code states that we need to have these type of contracts in place. But I do think it's obviously too late to put anything for this year. So I think this is a good gap stop in terms of what, at least initial steps. So I don't have any issues or questions unless anybody else does.
Could we get a copy of the rules that you're?
I can get help. And they will be on our town website. So when you come in for a business license, these will be there. You will have to agree and sign at the bottom that you understand. We're trying to keep it from getting out of hand.
All right. So you're going to put those on. This is discuss the process. There's no vote. You should put it on. If any of the council has an issue, please communicate with Town Hall in terms of those agreements. Review March financials. Any questions concerning the financial statements that were posted?
It looks like we're getting more.
Congratulations again for managing expenses pretty well, and the revenue came in great.
Sheena did an excellent job at that.
All right.
Thank you, Sheena.
Moving on to number 24. Comments, Town Manager.
Yeah, real quick, the improvement I've seen in operations and service to the town, our property owners and business owners is just outstanding. Everything the chief and I are doing is for public safety for the town. The teamwork, cooperation, and everyone working together as one team has never been better in the 2.5 years that I've been here. And a lot of it goes to our new chief. We truly have an outstanding team that is dedicated to serving the town, the property owners, the business owners, and our guests. And again, a special thanks to Sheena for the 2023 and the 2024 budget. Kate, continue on with a great newsletter. We have a lot going on. DelDOT, the paramedics, Center of the Inland Bays, everything. Night, it's a 3.5 hour meeting. There's a lot going on. And just one more thing about the end of Rodney Street, there where the marina is. Blue Water bought that piece of property over 6 months ago. Tuesday of this week, they turned in their building permit for what they want to build down there. They're asking us to turn that around very quickly. Dawn Hicks has been working on it. Today, she emailed them with 4 questions that they have. I'm just saying to the commissioners, if you get any emails or phone calls that we're not turning around that quick enough, they bought that over 6 months ago. Tuesday, we got their request. Friday, today, Dawn went back to them with some additional questions. They have to answer that to get back to us. We will move as fast as we can with all the people that we have to serve. So you may end up hearing something about Blue Water.
It's a queue in and out. First one in, first one out. So.
Correct. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, sir. Chief?
Well, since you have my 5-page report, I'll just keep to a couple things. I wanted to say, the good news is we have hired a certified police officer from Pennsylvania with 20-plus years of service, 15 years as a sergeant. He got hired in Milford in October, and he decided that he would prefer to work with us. He will be starting at the end of the month. He's a
Smart man.
supervisor and instructor. We're bringing him on as a private first class. He lives in Lewis. He grew up coming to this area. I believe his family had a home in this area, so he's very familiar with Dewey. And he's very excited to join us. So that will put our staffing up to 9. So I'm only down 1 position, which is fantastic. I'm very thrilled to have him start with us. You'll meet him probably next month. We've been doing seasonal interviews for the last 2 weeks. I have offered 12 seasonal offers positions so far. I have about 3 more next week. I offered 1 dispatcher position today. So I'm hoping that I can at least get up to the 15 we had last year. But we did post something on our Facebook page as put it out there like, hey, if you're still interested, we still have spots left. So our academy starts May 15th. It's going to be at the Hyatt. It'll run for about 6-7 days before they can start working the road. And then we're trying to figure out something with the dispatcher. I've been able to provide more dispatcher coverage by working on some shift schedules and things like that. We've purchased 3 vehicles already. 2 of them have come in. We're working on getting them outfitted, waiting for all the equipment to come in. We did a station-wide cleanup of stuff that had been sitting in there 20-plus years you opened the door and it was piled high. You didn't even know what was in there. We filled up 2 dumpsters. We've gotten some freshening up of the agency. They're doing some painting and making things more presentable and welcoming, like you had referred to earlier, since we do have a lot of guests and outside agencies that come in there. We're working on hopefully we'll be in our new uniform by the end of May before the Memorial Day weekend. It'll be a lot more professional looking than what they're wearing now at night. And I can give you the stats that I've been able to find. We were working with state police came by today. They actually have a great system that enables you to get different information and graphs on how many crimes you had on a certain day of the week and different things like that. So we're still working with them. He was there several hours trying to get it set up in our system, but at the time of the meeting, it wasn't done yet. So for the month of March, we had 25 criminal complaints. We had 61 e-tickets written, 1 collision, 3 e-warnings written. We had 7 misdemeanor arrests, 2 felony arrests, 1 civil citation, 4 criminal violations of citations, and then we seized 4 guns. And that doesn't account for some of the stuff where we had some fights and some assaults that occurred, and we're still working with the AG's office on the assault, so we haven't obtained the warrants yet, so we had more than that. And as you all know, you've been here, it's going to get a lot. My stats will be a lot higher in the next several months, but that's what was going on in the month of March. Once again, my goal is I'm working on some new graphics and stuff to make our police cars more visible, more reflective. I'm going to put some reflective things on the bumper. According to NHTSA, if you do put reflective, like you see with the rescue squads and stuff like that, it prevents rear end collisions. And since I know the traffic gets so congested here, and we sit on the coastal highway a lot just for our presence, that will avoid us getting struck in the rear. So I plan on doing something like that on the rear of the cars, high visibility, light bars on all the new cars. Everything's going to be fully marked. Officers will be highly visible patrolling. The bikes will be out there. We'll get the seasonals trained on those. We're going to have canine in the fall. We're going to wait till the season ends and we have more time to focus on that. But I did obtain a car for that. We'll start equipping that.
And the corporal who was promoted today will be our
canine handler. He was a canine handler in Maryland before, so he's already got experience and he still is currently training dogs.
Great. So
I think that's it in a nutshell, but I do have a lot more in my report that I wrote for you. Do you have any questions for me?
Maybe after we read the report.
Okay, sounds good.
Commissioner Bauer.
Just want to thank both our town manager and our chief on a great job they're doing. So,
thank you. Appreciate that.
I mean, a lot getting done. The next marketing meeting is on May 2nd, so that's coming up if anybody would like to attend, since they're going to talk about some word salads or word soup or whatever you call it, the alphabet soup. Come on in. I mean, I think the more people we have participate in it, then we're going to get presented something we can finally approve and move forward with. So I invite your help with that. Another than that, hey, you did pretty good, man. You said
30 minutes over.
6:29. That's all I got.
Commissioner Gibbings.
Chief, I want to thank you for the detailed report. I multitasked and read a lot of it, and it was wow. I wrote several times. As you get this data from the state police, it'd be lovely if we can compare to prior year.
Yes.
Because prior month is going to be a changing target, but from March of this year to March of last year, just to see where
Absolutely.
we're going.
How far back can you, if you don't mind me, how
Yeah.
far back can you go?
I think we can go back several years, but I'll have to, find that out.
And I was walking up Coastal last night, and I saw a truck come down the street with no lights on. I said, they're gonna get pulled over. And right there, they didn't even get a block. So it's good to see folks out on the road. Thank you.
Commissioner Jazinski.
Everything seems to be going well, so I'm speechless.
Wow. We'll take that, Commissioner Persinger.
Just one thing, I listened to the last marketing meeting, and I thought at the end, it sounded like they were beginning to question their purpose.
Yes.
And I think that's unfortunate. I mean, I think marketing the town is really important. And I know that we gave them some credit for things that they have done in the past in the comprehensive development plan report that we sent to the state last year.
Yeah.
So, maybe we need to spend a little time talking about what the function of the committee should be and, re-energize that in some way, because I think it can be an important committee.
Yeah, there's some things I'd like to do. It's really hard. Because marketing for the town, we can't put on events.
Right.
Businesses are going to put the events on. We can enable those things and we can help promote it, but we don't physically do it. And I think it's just it's a understanding of, because they wanted to do like a wine tasting. Well, we can't sell wine. We're not in the wine business. We're not going to have a wine tasting thing. So things like that. So I think, what their thoughts are of what they could do and can't do are different. And, I think everybody understands it now. And, I think they're doing a great job enabling things and doing the work on it, which, you got to get people involved in it. We could do it ourselves, but that doesn't get your community involved. That doesn't get the other property owners involved. And it doesn't help anybody. So I think the more people we get engaged, the better off we are.
That's all I had.
So you have, I've got 19 items to go through. I know this is a long meeting, so I appreciate everyone. As we went through 24, Kate was right. And she said that you're never going to be able to get through this, but it was all important stuff. It was all important stuff that we had to go through. And I'm happy with some of the decisions and directions that we're going forth. Again, I just ask for some prayers for Bruce. He was our first mayor and served as mayor 6 years. So with that.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
6:32 and 44 seconds.